It was swelteringly hot. It felt as though she had been tossed inside an air fryer running dry. Every breath she drew carried a scorching heat that threatened to parch her insides. Yan Xing's eyes flew wide open. Blazing sunlight stabbed straight into her pupils, forcing tears to well up instantly. There was no air-conditioned room, no soft spring mattress bed, nor her ceiling lined with sound-absorbing cotton. All she saw stretched endlessly before her was a blindingly bright expanse of ocean. Water, she tried to speak. Her throat felt stuffed full of rusted blades, and every swallow sent tearing pain shooting through her. Cracks split her parched lips open, and the metallic tang of blood spread across her mouth. Yan Xing instinctively reached out for her nightstand, where a 2-liter bottle of purified water always sat. Instead, her palm met rough, scorching, water-softened planks. She froze. Glancing down, she found herself sitting atop a crudely built square raft. It measured roughly 2 meters on each side, just large enough for one adult to lie flat. Its 4 joined planks creaked unpleasantly as they rose and fell with the waves. Had she transmigrated? Was this some cruel prank? Yan Xing's mind went blank for a split second. Then a terror worse than confusion coiled around her heart like a venomous snake. Frantically, she patted herself all over. She wore nothing but cotton home pajamas. She had absolutely nothing else. Most people would react first with fear over their strange surroundings after waking in an unfamiliar place. For Yan Xing, her first thought was that everything was falling apart. Few knew what she had endured during 2 months of catastrophic urban flooding. Water and power had been completely cut off, and society had descended into hell. She had watched neighbors turn feral, fighting viciously over half a bottle of stale drinking water. Those 2 months had forged her into a severe hoarder, obsessed with stockpiling supplies. Now there was nothing around her at all. An emotionless mechanical voice boomed inside her head, and a translucent pale blue holographic screen popped up in front of her eyes. Welcome to the ocean survival game. Billions of players across Earth have been transported here simultaneously. No laws exist, no morality binds you. There is only one rule: stay alive. New player hint 1, seawater must never be drunk directly. Drinking it will speed up fatal dehydration. New player hint 2, watch for supply crates floating on the waves. They are your only source of supplies early game. New player hint 3, protect your raft. If it is completely destroyed, you will face the horrors lurking in the deep sea. New player hint 4, grab your starting tool beside you and begin your fight for survival. The hologram flickered once then shrank, leaving several functional panels. Personal stats, chat channel, trading hall not yet unlocked. Yan Xing drew a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. Trauma from past disasters gave her an odd resilience toward extreme environments. Panic would get her killed. She tapped the chat channel marked with a flashing red notification dot. It contained a world channel and a regional channel sector 10086. The regional feed scrolled wildly, dozens of messages flooding in every second, filled with despair and panic. Help! I can't swim. Somebody save me. Where am I? Is this some reality show prank? I refuse to take part. Send me home. I'll pay 10 times the penalty fee. I'm burning up, I'm so thirsty. Give me a sip of water and you can have my luxury downtown apartment. Don't kid yourself. Houses mean nothing when you're about to die. I'll give 10 Bitcoin for 1 bottle of mineral water. Everyone stay calm. Read the system prompts carefully. This is real survival. Stop wasting energy screaming and look for supplies. Look for what supplies? There's nothing but ocean everywhere. They gave me a cheap plastic hook. Am I supposed to fish sharks with it? Anyone want to team up? I'm an ex-serviceman, physically fit. Share supplies and I'll keep you safe. I'm terrified. Something in the water is watching me. Reading the flood of panicked messages, Yan Xing fully accepted reality. This was no dream. All humanity had been dragged into this brutal survival game. She did not type a single reply. Wasting energy complaining would only drain her bodily fluids faster. Closing the interface, she looked down at her feet. Lying there was a simple 1-meter-long plastic hook. Worn plastic hook. New player starting item. Can snag floating debris from the sea. May snap under moderate force. Sweat pooled inside Yan Xing's palms as she gripped the hook. The sun burned mercilessly overhead. If she failed to find fresh water within 4 hours, severe dehydration would set in, robbing her of even the strength to swing the hook. She had to act now. Shakily, she stood on wobbly legs and squinted out over the distorted, heat-shimmering ocean surface. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. Dizziness washed over her, and she was on the verge of collapsing when her eyes locked onto something. A wooden supply crate, around half a meter across, drifted slowly toward her on the current off her left side. Supplies. Hope blazed in her dry eyes. Even a mouthful of water inside could save her life. Gritting her teeth, she clutched the plastic hook tightly and shuffled to the raft's edge. 10 meters. 5 meters. 3 meters. Close enough. She inhaled sharply and hurled the hook outward. Click. The plastic barb latched firmly onto rope wrapped around the crate. Relief surged through her. She started hauling it toward her. A hiss sounded from behind the crate. SSS, every hair on Yenxing's body stood on end. Sliding out from the crate's shaded side was a sea snake as thick as a forearm, its scales patterned black and yellow. Its distinctly triangular head bore 2 long fangs glinting eerily pale blue. Mutant banded sea kite, moderate hazard creature. Highly venomous. A bite triggers nerve paralysis within 3 minutes. Followed by cardiac arrest within 10 minutes. A tiny system notification popped up. Yenxing froze. The mutant sea kite coiled atop the crate, raising its upper body. Cold vertical pupils locked straight onto her. It was guarding its prize. Or it saw the approaching human as its next meal. Damn it, a quiet curse escaped her parched throat. If she pulled the crate toward her, the venomous snake would lunge along the rope or wood. Trapped on her cramped 2-meter raft. There was nowhere for her to run. If she let go and abandoned the crate, she would die of thirst under the scorching sun. Dizziness worsened. Raging thirst sapped the last of her stamina. Her vision blurred and doubled. Old memories crashed over her, the suffocating dark, burning stomach acid, the desperate craving so strong she had almost wanted to drink her own blood. No. She had hoarded so many supplies. She had never gotten to enjoy them. She would not die at the fangs of some repulsive reptile. Fear faded from Yenxing's gaze, replaced by the ferocity forged by desperate survival. Just as her will to survive peaked, ding, a crisp chime echoed inside her mind. Detected extreme survival drive. Soul frequency match successful. Congratulations, Yenxing. You have awakened your extraordinary talent, all-item synthesis. All-item synthesis, no blueprints required. Fuse, restructure, and upgrade any materials following basic physical logic. Daily synthesis attempts remaining, 5 out of 5. Her mind cleared instantly, as though injected with a powerful stimulant. A talent. This was her golden advantage. There was no time to test its full limits. Her eyes scanned frantically for a weapon to kill the snake. One plank on the raft had been damaged upon arrival. A half-meter-long splinter of hardwood jutted loose. Yenxing stamped down hard with her foot. Crack. The splinter snapped clean off. She bent to pick it up, then spotted something else floating less than a meter off the raft's right side, a rusted scrap of metal the size of her palm. Holding the hooked rope steady with one hand to keep the crate from drifting away, she snatched her neck towel and scooped the scrap metal aboard. Synthesize, she shouted mentally. Mental energy drained away as her will activated the power. Bright white light wrapped around both objects. The rough wooden fragment straightened and hardened, its grain growing tight and dense. Rust flaked off the scrap metal, melting into silvery liquid metal that flowed over the top of the wood, forming a sharp blade. The whole process lasted barely a second. When the light faded, she held a heavy, simply crafted weapon with a deadly sharp edge. Sharp wooden iron spear, excellent grade, forged from hardwood and scrap iron. High piercing power. Ideal for fighting lightly armored beasts. The cool solid weight steadied her pounding heart. Her hoarder's instinct to defend resources took complete hold. That supply crate belonged to her. Every drop of water inside belonged to her. Anything trying to steal her supplies would be destroyed. SSS. The mutant sea kite sensed the shift in threat. It coiled its body like a drawn bow, then launched itself forward. A black-yellow blur, fangs dripping pale blue venom, it leaped across 2 meters straight for Yenxing's face. Rotten stench washed over her. Instead of stepping back, Yenxing widened her eyes. She gripped the spear firmly and drove it forward with all her remaining strength. A wet, tearing sound echoed across the open ocean. She did not hesitate. Leaning forward, she drove her full body weight behind the strike. The iron spear tip pierced cleanly through the snake's neck. SSS. Agony threw the snake into a frenzy. Its powerful tail whipped violently against the wooden crate, producing loud thuds. Droplets of glowing blue venom splattered onto the raft planks. Sizzle smoking black pits burned instantly into the wood. Yenxing's eyelid twitched. Cold sweat soaked her back. Even one drop landing on bare skin would have killed her. Die. Her jaw clenched so hard her eyes reddened with strain. Instead of pulling back, she pressed the spear down harder, pinning the thrashing snake firmly to the crate so it could not break free. Those dark, desperate months had forged her ruthlessness. Mercy toward threats meant death for yourself. Whether human or monster, kill or be killed. 1 minute. 2 minutes. The snake's struggles weakened. Its pupils dulled before its body went limp. System notice. Player Yenxing has slain a level 1 mutant banded sea kite. Loot obtained. Mutated snake meat ×2, intact venom fangs ×2. As the system voice finished, the snake's body dissolved into specks of light. 2 clean chunks of red meat and 2 sharp blue-tinged fangs were left behind. Huff, huff, only then did Yenxing collapse heavily onto the scorching raft, completely drained. She gasped for air, staring at her own shaking hands. Of course she was afraid. This was her first time taking a life. I survived. A hoarse laugh escaped her, despite her burning throat. Hoarders found simple joy in gains, even after brushing with death. She quickly stored the snake meat and fangs inside her starting inventory. Then she hauled the supply crate all the way to the raft edge using her hook. The crate was small, coated in green seaweed and weathered marks, apparently torn loose from some sunken vessel. It had no lock. Yenjam wedged her spear tip into its seam and pried. Click. The lid popped open. She had hoped for bottled drinking water. Instead, several scattered items lay inside. System notice. Opened new player supply crate. Obtained. Blueprint for basic water purifier common ×1, scrap plastic sheets ×4, dry firewood ×4, empty mineral water bottle ×1. A blueprint. Excitement flashed across Yenxing's face. She grabbed the yellowed parchment scroll. Blueprint for basic water purifier common. Filters seawater or dirty water into minimally safe drinking water. Required materials. Scrap plastic sheets 0/4, firewood 0/4. Prerequisite. Basic workbench. Build time. 60 minutes. Joy froze on her face the moment she read the requirements. Damn you, system. She nearly tore the blueprint in frustration. She already possessed every material listed. But she needed a basic workbench to build it. She had not even a simple stool. Where would she get one? On top of that, construction took a full hour. Beneath the blazing sun, her body was already tipping into severe dehydration. 20 more minutes, and she would slip into shock. A finished purifier would be useless if she was already dead. Wait, her talent. Desperation sparked new hope. All item synthesis. Its description explicitly allowed fusion and restructuring. Eyes hardening, she piled the blueprint, plastic sheets, firewood, and empty bottle onto the planks before her. Synthesize, she roared inside her mind. Mental energy drain hit harder than when forging the spear. Sharp stabbing pain throbbed in her temples and her vision doubled for several seconds. Bright white light burst forth. The blueprint dissolved into stardust, merging into wood and plastic. In an instant, the glow faded. A half-meter-tall apparatus stood before her. A wooden frame supported 2 stacked plastic funnels, filled with dark filtering material. Upgraded basic water purifier, excellent grade, created via talent-driven restructuring. Filtration efficiency increased by 200. No charcoal or sand required. Pour seawater directly inside. Produces 500 milliliters purified water every 10 minutes. Reading the system description, the heavy weight of fear lifted from her chest. Success. She had bypassed the system's frustrating restrictions. That was true advantage. She wasted no time. Filling the empty bottle with bitter seawater scooped straight from the ocean, she poured it into the purifier's top funnel. Drip. Almost immediately, clear water dropped from the outlet. Drip, drip, drip droplets turned into a thin stream, collecting inside the plastic container she had prepared. She watched the water level rise, swallowing hard. Slow yet wonderful. For someone dying of thirst, no sound was more beautiful than that steady dripping. When enough water collected for 2 mouthfuls, she could wait no longer. She lifted the container and tipped her head back, swallowing the precious fresh water. A rush spread through her. Cool liquid soothed her cracked lips and burning raw throat. It felt as though every cell in her body rejoiced. She coughed slightly, drinking too fast, yet she did not care. She licked every stray drop spilled onto her lips. Not a single drop could go to waste. This was liquid life. Only 2 mouthfuls, yet the crippling dizziness eased noticeably. She exhaled deeply and lay back on the raft, staring up at the merciless sun. A faint bitter smile tugged at her lips. I made it. You haven't beaten me, system. While waiting for more water to filter, she opened the chat channel to see how the rest of the world fared. The regional channel was still full of despair. Water, just one sip, I don't want to die. I gave in and drank seawater. I cannot stop vomiting. My insides feel torn apart. Help. Don't grab supply crates with bare hands. I tried and got bitten by that blue fong snake. My hand has gone numb and turned black. Does anyone have antidote? I beg you, I don't want to die. There is no antidote this early. Accept your fate. I am the CEO of Zhang Group. Someone bring me a bottle of water right now. Once I'm rescued, I'll give you 10 million. No, 100 million. Plus company shares. Stupid CEO. Your lousy shares aren't even worth using as toilet paper out here. I could trade one biscuit for everything you own, you hear me? Reading these messages filled with despair and madness, Yan Xing felt nothing. The apocalypse was cruelly unforgiving. She stroked the water purifier beside her, which hummed softly with a steady tick-tock sound. A profound sense of safety washed over her. While others retched in agony trying to drink seawater or lay dying from venomous snake bites, Yan Xing already had a reliable source of endless clean drinking water. On top of that, she held 2 portions of fresh snake meat as food reserves. This stark contrast, trapped in a hellish world while she stayed relatively safe, sent a rush of exhilaration straight to her brain, perfectly suiting her hoarder instincts. Once a bottle fills up with filtered water, I'll find a way to start a fire and roast the snake meat, Yan Xing thought contentedly. After I eat and drink my fill, I'll gather planks to expand this shabby raft. 2 by 2 meters is far too small. It gives me no sense of security at all. She lost herself in pleasant visions of a luxury ocean home. Yet within this high-dimensional cruel experimental arena, the system never allowed players long to catch their breath. Just as Yan Xing finally relaxed and reached for her full bottle of purified water, without any warning, the sky turned pitch black. There was no gradual dusk, no fading sunset glow. It was as if a giant switch had been flipped. One moment, the scorching hot sun blazed overhead. The next, an invisible sea monster seemed to swallow it whole. Silence and total darkness swallowed everything. The smile froze on Yan Xing's face. What is going on? Before she could process what had happened, bone-chilling gales swept across the sea, carrying fine ice shards sharp as blades. Temperatures plummeted catastrophically within mere seconds. Crack, crack, crack. Beneath faint starlight, Yan Xing stared in horror. Saltwater splashes on the raft's edge froze into pale frost right before her eyes. She drew a sharp breath and instinctively wrapped her arms around herself. Cold. A penetrating chill that threatened to freeze her marrow crept up through the wooden planks beneath her feet. Only moments ago, temperatures had soared to 40 degrees, hot enough to dry people out. Now it dipped well below freezing. Her thin cotton pajamas offered barely more protection than tissue paper against the bitter wind. Her teeth chattered violently, and her body shook uncontrollably. What kind of insane weather is this? Yan Xing rubbed her stiff arms. Every breath she exhaled billowed white fog. She immediately opened the chat channel to check whether this was a local anomaly or another trick by the system. Sure enough, regional channel area 10086 was in complete chaos. Messages scrolled so fast they blurred, every line overflowing with desperate frenzy. Help! I'm freezing. I was just rinsing my hands in seawater, and it froze solid around them. Does anyone have spare clothes? I'll trade wood. Blueprints. Anything. Quit yelling. It was so hot earlier nobody even wanted underwear. No one carries extra clothes. My roommate, he couldn't stand the cold. Thought seawater might be warmer and jumped overboard. The water is full of ice fragments. He never came back. Your raft must be empty now. Send your coordinates. I'll come merge rafts with yours. You monster. How can you think about that right now? I'm going to freeze to death. I won't play saint. Survival of the fittest, got it. Anyone with extra wood? I have a fire-starting blueprint, but no materials. Reading the chat logs full of despair, breakdown, and raw human cruelty, Yan Xing's expression turned icy. She could rely only on herself. Yan Xing closed the holographic screen and forced herself to calm down. Stay calm. I have the synthesis talent. Think. What do I need? Her mind raced. Inside her backpack lay 3 dry blocks of wood left over from opening supply crates, plus leftover plastic sheets. But she had no ignition source. Starting fire by friction? Too slow. Sea gusts will blow it straight out. Lips blue with cold, she scrambled across the raft, searching frantically for anything usable. Her gaze landed on two bluish glinting snake fangs looted from the sea serpent she had killed. The venom is highly corrosive. If I rub it against wood shavings? A bold idea sparked in her mind. Without hesitation, she moved into action. Synthesize. She stacked the 3 wood blocks, leftover plastic sheets, and 1 snake fang together and focused her will. White light flashed. A crudely built windproof fire pit appeared in the middle of the raft, fitted with a sturdy wind-blocking base. Inside sat several pieces of charcoal, topped with a small pile of dry wood shavings for tinder. Yet it remained cold. No flame burned. Yanxing took a deep breath and picked up the second fang. Carefully, she scraped its sharp tip firmly across the charcoal inside the pit. His venom made harsh contact with dry charcoal, producing a tiny spark. Quick as a flash, she held the tinder shavings to the spark and blew gently. Puffs of air. Thin wispy smoke curled upward. Then a small but bright flame flickered among the shavings. Yanxing carefully stacked small charcoal pieces onto the flame. In less than 30 seconds, steady warm yellow fire burned brightly inside the windproof pit. It worked. She sank down beside the fire, letting out a long, relieved breath. Firelight chased away pitch-black darkness within a 2-meter radius and brought precious warmth. Across the endless, frigid Dead Sea, that tiny flame stood like a lone lighthouse in the night. It drove back her physical cold and became her first real emotional anchor in this alien world. As long as she had fire, clean water, and food, she, the hoarder, would survive. Her stomach rumbled loudly, breaking the tense silence. Yanxing realized that since arriving in this strange world, she had eaten nothing besides 1 life-saving sip of water. She touched her empty belly and pulled out the 2 pieces of snake meat from her backpack. The meat was clean, scale-free, almost odorless, and a healthy shade of pink. Swallowing hard, she threaded 1 piece onto a stiff broken wooden stick as a skewer and held it above the fire pit. Sizzling sounds filled the air. Grease oozed out from the roasting meat and dripped onto red-hot charcoal, bursting into little sparks. A rich, savory roasted aroma drifted across the sea breeze. It smells amazing. Her eyes locked onto the roasting meat. Her throat kept bobbing with swallowed saliva. For someone starved to the brink, that scent was irresistible. After roughly 10 minutes, the surface turned golden and crispy. Unable to hold back any longer, she bit down hard. Hot. She gasped from the scalding heat yet refused to spit the meat out, swallowing hastily. There was no salt, no cumin, no seasoning of any kind. Even so, it tasted like the finest delicacy imaginable. Warm roasted meat settled in her stomach, spreading heat that chased away every last trace of chill in her limbs. Yanxing sighed in deep satisfaction, tears pricked the corners of her eyes. While finishing the rest of her meal, she reopened the regional chat channel. Messages of agony grew even more desperate. I can't go on. My hands and feet have gone numb. I hear noises in the water. Something is ramming my raft. Somebody please help. Yanxing said nothing. She had no intention of trading her remaining piece of snake meat. Kindness was a luxury unaffordable in the apocalypse. Survival was the only truth. She could not afford compassion for others when her own life hung in the balance. More importantly, she must not flaunt her resources. If people learned she possessed fire and roasted food while everyone else starved and froze, terrible trouble would follow. Once she finished eating, she prepared to toss the skewer into the fire as extra fuel. Her temples throbbed from sustained stress. She leaned toward the fire pit, ready to catch a short nap. The instant her eyes closed. Thud. A dull impact struck the edge of her raft. Yanxing's eyes flew open. Every muscle tensed. That sound was not waves lapping against wood. It sounded heavy, solid wood colliding forcefully. She grabbed her iron-tipped spear and stared sharply toward the source of the noise. Firelight only illuminated 2 meters around her. Out in the Black Sea beyond that circle of light, another raft, noticeably larger than her 2 by 2 meter one, had drifted silently up against hers. It pressed tight against her raft's edge. Standing in the darkness right where the 2 rafts met was a huge, towering figure like an iron tower. Flickering firelight caught the lower half of his face. He had a heavy beard, his features twisted by bitter cold and hunger. Most unsettling of all, his gaze ignored Yanxing and her spear. It locked greedily past her, fixed firmly on the glowing windproof fire pit, and on the skewer still dotted with faint grease from roasted meat in her hand. Thud. creak grind. The two rafts ground against each other with a rolling ocean swell. The unpleasant squeal of wood echoed through the silent night. Every muscle in Yanxing's body coiled tight. She dared not step backward. Directly behind her stood her water purifier. One misstep would send her plunging into the sea. She gripped her iron-tipped spear, pointing its sharp tip straight ahead. By the dancing warm glow, she saw the man clearly. He stood well over 1.8 meters tall. His gray hoodie was soaked through with seawater. He had a powerfully muscular build, yet shivered violently. Frost coated his hair and eyebrows. His lips were blue, his teeth chattering non-stop. Far more alarming than his miserable appearance was his eyes. Bloodshot, they held no trace of relief or humble pleas common among stranded survivors. Only naked greed. His gaze clung to the fire pit, drinking in its warmth, then swept across the greasy skewer and the slowly dripping purifier. Yanxing heard him swallow hard. She knew that look all too well. She had seen it many times during those 2 months without power or running water in the old world, the look of a starving man staring at food. Stay back. Yanxing's voice was ice cold, no trace of softness. It cut sharper than the gale. She pushed her spear forward slightly. Its metallic tip glinted dangerously in firelight. Startled by the weapon, the man halted mid-step before crossing onto her raft. Wariness flickered across his features. Clearly, he had not expected this seemingly slender young woman to wield such a formidable weapon. Soon, however, bone-deep cold and ravenous hunger overpowered his caution. He forced a lopsided, pained smile. "Miss, don't misunderstand. I mean you no harm." Cold made his speech thick and shaky. "My raft drifted over on its own. It wasn't intentional." Yanxing did not relax, keeping her spear steady. As he sized her up, jealousy burned inside him when he noticed her relatively clean clothes and decent complexion. Why? He suffered terribly from cold, facing certain death out here, yet this woman had fire, clean water, and had just eaten roasted meat. Jealousy contorted his blue-tinged face, yet he quickly masked it behind a deceptive, earnest expression. "Miss, freezing conditions like this, meeting someone out on this endless ocean is fate." He rubbed his hands, shielding himself against wind while trying to close the emotional distance. "Living alone out here is incredibly dangerous." He puffed out his broad chest to display his strong physique. "I worked construction before. I've got great physical strength. Who knows what sea monsters or hostile people we might face later. Even with a weapon, one woman cannot hold out forever. Slide your fire pit closer to our raft's junction so I can warm myself. Give me some hot water and share half of that meat you were eating." When he spoke of meat, his eyes lit up with hunger, yet his tone sounded self-righteous. "I'll protect you in return. I provide strength, you provide supplies. A powerful partnership. What do you say?" Yanxing almost laughed at his words. A powerful partnership? On a raft merely 4 square meters wide, giving up space meant handing over your very life. If he stepped onto her raft, his massive frame would overpower her instantly. He would seize her fire pit, her purifier, everything. She might get thrown into the freezing sea to be eaten by marine predators. Is that all you have to offer? Empty promises hoping to take what you want for free. Disdain filled her gaze. She did not bother tearing apart his transparent act. She had met countless men pretending to be helpful during disasters, men who fled when danger arrived yet fought ruthlessly for resources. Enough. Yanxing's patience snapped. She spoke sharply. "Get away. Move your raft away from mine, or I will drive this spear through you." Her blunt words stung like slaps across his face. His fake smile crumbled. "Miss, that is unreasonable." His tone darkened with veiled menace. "We are all human fighting to survive. Haven't you read the chat logs? Countless people are freezing to death." He began manipulating her with moral pressure. "You hold fire and water all to yourself. You sit there watching your fellow human beings freeze and starve to death. How can you sleep at night? Being human means not being so selfish. Share what you have. It's virtuous." Yanxing watched his self-righteous performance, the sneer on her lips deepening. "Fellow human beings? Virtue?" Yanxing's gaze drifted past the man toward the raft behind him. The fire cast dim light, but Yanxing had excellent eyesight. She could clearly see that his raft was noticeably larger than the system assigned initial 2 by 2 meter raft. It had obviously been crudely pieced together from 2 or more rafts. Along its edge, a few drops of dark red, half-frozen blood were still visible. "Your raft is bigger than the starting one, and the bloodstains haven't even dried," Yanxing said coldly, calling him out. You've stayed alive and expanded your territory. Was that through mutual aid? Or robbery and murder? Exposed, the man's expression turned vicious in an instant. He had assumed she was just a naive girl lucky enough to find high-grade supplies. A little intimidation or empty promises would make her hand over everything. Instead, her eyes cut like blades. Since his mask was torn off, he dropped the act entirely. Damn it. He spat flecks of blood onto the water. All hypocrisy vanished, replaced by the ferocity of a beast unleashed by the end of the world chaos. You refuse a decent offer, do you? His right hand, hidden behind his back, snapped forward. In his grip was a 40-centimeter rusted machete stained with old and fresh blood. If Yan Xing had let him draw near under his lies, that blade would already have split her skull open. I spoke nicely to you because I was giving you a chance to live. The man lifted the machete, his eyes bulging with rage. Under the pressure of survival, humanity's darkest instincts ran wild. He had become nothing more than a creature driven by greed. Why does some girl get all the luck? Why do I soak in seawater while you sit warm by the fire eating meat? He roared, trying to bolster his courage. There are no laws, no morals in this cursed place. Might makes right. Supplies belong to the strong. Greed and killing intent blazed in his eyes as he glanced back and forth between the water purifier and Yan Xing. You refuse to cooperate, so I will kill you right now. Your fire, your water, everything here will be mine. No sooner had the words left his mouth than he relied on his sheer physical size, paying no mind to Yan Xing's spear. Roaring like an enraged bear, he pushed hard against his own raft. It rocked violently and drifted backward while his huge body leaped across the gap between the two rafts, crashing heavily onto Yan Xing's tiny 2-by-2-meter platform. Boom! The raft creaked under the overwhelming weight and sank sharply. Frigid seawater flooded over Yan Xing's ankles. Only 2 meters separated them. There was nowhere to dodge, nowhere to retreat. Die! The man grinned savagely. Both hands gripped the rusted machete, which whistled through the air as it swung straight down toward Yan Xing's head. Whoosh! The rusted blade sliced downward with terrifying force. Under the man's weight, Yan Xing's tiny raft groaned, threatening to fall apart. It dipped again, icy seawater washing over her ankles. There was hardly enough space to turn around. Escape was impossible. Bloodshot eyes wide, the man's face twisted with savage excitement. He could already picture the girl collapsing under his blow and imagined himself sitting beside the warm fire, enjoying roasted meat. Yet when his eyes met Yan Xing's, his frenzy froze. Illuminated by firelight, her dark eyes held perfect, unshakable calm. Foolish, Yan Xing murmured in a cold voice. Instead of raising her spear to block, she simply let go. The spear clattered onto the water-soaked planks. Facing the blade inches away, she focused with extraordinary intensity inside her mind, locking onto 3 items inside her backpack, remaining high-quality lumber, discarded plastic sheets, and the 2 venomous fangs she had collected after killing the sea ring snake. Synthesize, she ordered silently. Her innate talent, all things synthesis, surged under mortal danger. A large portion of her mental energy drained away, leaving her face pale. Brilliant cobalt blue light burst between her hands. The glare was blinding. Blinded, the man blinked instinctively, and his strike veered just half an inch off target. That half-second pause was all she needed. The light faded. A sleek black repeating crossbow with cold mechanical lines and clicking internal mechanisms materialized in her hands. Repeating venom crossbow, rare grade. The frame is forged from tough hardwood and high-strength plastic. Fangs of the mutated sea ring snake serve as arrowheads. Fires 3 consecutive bolts coated with powerful sea snake neurotoxin. A single wound can prove fatal. It was already loaded. At point-blank range, Yan Xing pulled the trigger without hesitation. Swish! 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 3 faint hisses cut through the bitter gale. 3 faint blue streaks flew forth like messengers of death. The first bolt buried itself deep in the man's unprotected left chest. The second pierced his right shoulder. The third, the fatal shot, drove straight into his thick throat. Gurgle. The machete stopped its descent barely 5 centimeters above Yan Xing's head. The man froze solid. His eyes bulged almost out of their sockets. The arrogance and greed on his face gave way to utter horror and disbelief. How was this possible? She had only held a crude spear a moment ago. Where had this terrifying crossbow come from? He tried to speak, to question, even to beg for mercy. But every time he opened his mouth, thick, foul-smelling black blood poured out. The sea ring snake neurotoxin was devastating. Within seconds, dark purplish-black veins bulged on his neck as poison raced through his bloodstream and paralyzed his central nervous system. Clatter. The rusted machete clattered onto the raft. His nearly 100-kilogram body crumpled like a boneless sack and crashed down. His upper torso rested on the edge of Yanxing's raft while his lower half dragged in the freezing sea. His eyes stayed wide open, fixed stubbornly on the fire pit just a short distance away. He had been so close to warmth. A cold, mechanical system notification echoed inside Yanxing's head. Congratulations, player Yanxing. You have completed the first kill in server 10086. Achievement unlocked, First Blood. Reward granted, base backpack capacity increased by 5 slots. Yanxing lowered the crossbow. Her fingertips trembled, not from fear, but from the physical rush of adrenaline. 2 deaths in a matter of hours, a venomous snake, and now a human being. She drew a deep breath filled with the sharp tang of blood and cold salt sea air. Her gaze hardened. In this lawless, orderless world governed purely by the law of the jungle, the moral constraints of civilized society meant nothing next to survival. If you try to steal what is mine, you pay with your life, she said flatly, staring down at the corpse. That was her rule, a hard boundary no one on these seas could cross. She stepped forward and kicked the man firmly in the shoulder. Splash. His body slid off the raft and vanished into dark rolling waves with barely a ripple. Yanxing felt no remorse. She turned toward the raft the man had left behind. It was larger than hers, piled haphazardly with broken planks and scraps of plastic. Not much to show for all that robbery, she muttered. True to her hoarder instinct that hated wasting anything, she activated the system's built-in decompose function targeting the unclaimed raft. White light flashed. The entire raft dissolved into basic materials that flowed automatically into her newly expanded backpack. Obtained, low-grade lumber ×8, rusted iron nails ×5, broken plastic sheet ×3. Obtained special item, 1 rusted iron pot. Yanxing's eyes lit up. A pot. This was an incredibly valuable find. With a pot, she no longer needed to roast meat over sticks and suffer burnt outer layers while the inside stayed raw. She could make real hot soup. She pulled the dented pot out at once. Its bottom was crusted thick with black soot, and a small chip marred its rim. Though he had looted it, the man had never possessed enough fresh water to clean it, nor fire to use it. What a waste, Yanxing sighed. She poured a small amount of filtered fresh water inside and scrubbed every surface carefully with a scrap of cloth. She set the cleaned pot over her wine-shielded fire pit, added water, dropped in the remaining prepared snake meat, and sliced off pieces of fatty snake tissue to toss inside as well. Finished, she sat beside the fire and waited patiently. Outside stretched a freezing night. Wind howled and waves heaved. Now and then, frozen bodies drifted past on ocean currents. Yet on Yanxing's cramped 2-by-2-meter raft, firelight danced warmly. Water inside the iron pot soon boiled, bubbling steadily. Fat melted, floating as glistening golden oil across the surface. Rich, savory steam spread through the despair-choked ocean air. Yanxing opened the global chat channel. Messages scrolled far more slowly in server 10086. Fewer players remained alive to type. It's so cold, somebody please help me, my hands are turning black, that brute, shark, tricked me into teaming up. He stole my beginner thermal clothes while I slept. May you suffer for this. Watch out for sea monsters. I just saw a squid bigger than a raft drag a man and his whole platform underwater. I don't want to stay here. I want to go home. I miss my mother's pork rib soup, I'm crying. Despair, betrayal, death, grief, these define the reality of this world. Reading those desperate posts, Yanxing lifted the hot pot and sipped steaming broth. The flavor was incredible. Starved and chilled to the bone, she felt warm nourishment surge straight through her body. Cold and exhaustion melted away, every muscle relaxing. She ate tender boiled snake meat and drank more hot broth. While tens of thousands fought and died through that bitter night, Yanxing enjoyed warmth and safety on her small raft. That stark contrast gave her deep-seated reassurance. Full and warm, she added more wood to the fire, wrapped herself tightly in her clothes, leaned against the water purifier, and drifted off to sleep amid flickering flames. Some time later, sunlight spilled over the horizon and fell across her face. Yanxing jolted awake. Her hand flew at once to her crossbow as she scanned her surroundings vigilantly. Dawn had arrived. Surface ice melted quickly, and the bitter wind softened. Temperatures climbed rapidly. "I survived the first night," she breathed in relief, stretching stiff muscles. Then she frowned at her own raft. Barely any space remained to stand. Lumber and plastic salvaged from the dead man, along with her purifier, fire pit, and iron pot, filled every corner. One careless movement could knock supplies overboard. To make matters worse, new supply crates and debris drifted past with the morning currents. Her hoarding instinct screamed to collect everything she saw. Yet manually hooking floating debris non-stop meant no sleep, no meals. She would wear herself out completely. "The raft is far too small. Manual salvage is terribly inefficient," she muttered, biting her thumbnail as ideas raced through her mind. "I need to automate this work and stop relying purely on manual labor." Having experienced severe material shortage, her hoarding impulse burned fully alive. For a hoarder, plentiful supplies were wonderful, but only if safely stored on ample space. Having valuables scattered all around, constantly at risk of tumbling into the sea, tormented her. Annoyed, she opened her beginner backpack. Thanks to the first blood reward, her capacity stood at 10 slots total. Snake meat occupied 1 slot, snake fangs another, the cleaned iron pot a third. She tried storing extra planks lying beside her. Ding! Backpack capacity insufficient. A red system warning popped up bluntly. "This backpack is ridiculously tiny," Yen Xing complained, staring helplessly at piles of materials. Expanding the raft was essential, yet that demanded massive quantities of base resources. Daylight brought wide-open visibility. She watched barrels, broad palm fronds, and driftwood float by on currents. Off to her left glinted a faint white glowing supply crate, more precious resources. She grabbed her plastic salvage hook, eager to reach out, and hesitated. Tension from last night's fight and lack of proper rest left her arms sore. She refused to spend every waking moment leaning over the edge hooking trash like some primitive laborer. That would be no different from mindless factory assembly line work. She tossed the hook aside with a dull thud against the planks. In this harsh, dangerous realm, stamina and mental focus were priceless. She had to replace manual salvage with automated systems to free herself. Infrastructure building was the only sensible path. Determined, she began sorting through her collected goods. Among materials taken from the dead man's raft was a tattered fishing net, apparently loot he could never repair. Damaged fishing net, low-grade lumber, rusted nails, 2 sharp scrap iron sheets. She laid each item neatly along the raft's edge. Closing her eyes, she let ocean wind blow through her hair. Inside her mind, she began frantically devising a net that could follow ocean currents to automatically intercept and catch supplies. It has to be wide open at the front, shaped like a funnel, to catch drifting debris over the largest possible area. The net pouch needs to be deep, and its bottom must be drawn tight. It has to bear considerable weight so supplies won't get swept away again by waves after impact. Wooden planks should reinforce both sides to make support frames. Scrap iron sheets can be melted down to make buckles for attaching to the raft, and iron nails will fasten everything firmly in place. As the mental blueprint grew clearer and more complete, Yen Xing's eyes flew open. Her gaze burned bright, and she barked one word: synthesize. The familiar sensation of mental power draining washed over her. A blinding white glow enveloped all materials before her. Within the radiance, invisible hands seemed to work with fine precision. Timber was automatically cut and assembled with crisp clicking sounds. Scrap iron melted and reshaped into well-fitted buckles. While Yen Xing threw herself into her little industrial revolution, the regional chat channel was filled with gloom and despair. Players who had survived the first night faced fresh rounds of struggle and hopelessness. "I'm starving. Has anyone fished up food? I'll trade 3 pieces of wood for a single bite. Don't even mention it." I leaned halfway off my raft trying to grab a supply crate and nearly got dragged overboard by the waves to feed the fish. My hands are covered in blisters. I cast my hook over 100 times and only pulled up 2 tattered plastic scraps. When will this misery end? Save your strength. Don't keep fishing. The midday sun is brutal. You'll die of heat stroke and thirst before you starve. Ordinary players wore themselves raw, swinging their hooks. Meanwhile, on Yen Xing's raft lay a perfectly shaped funnel-shaped tool, 1.5 meters long and 1 meter wide, shimmering faintly with system light. Automatic salvage net excellent grade, created through the synthesis talent. Its mesh is woven from exceptionally tough fibers. The wooden frame is sturdy and corrosion-resistant. mounted along the raft's waterline to automatically intercept and collect basic supplies carried by currents. Built-in temporary storage capacity, 10 slots. Perfect. Yanxing snapped her fingers in excitement, an irrepressible smile tugging at her lips. This device solved her problem of passive, hands-free resource gathering, and it even came with independent 10-slot storage space. For a compulsive hoarder crippled by storage anxiety, this was absolutely priceless. She lifted the heavy salvage net and carefully walked toward the stern of her raft. Ocean currents pushed against the front of the raft, so mounting the net at the stern was ideal for catching anything that slipped past. She aligned the metal buckles along the net's rim precisely against gaps in the raft planks. Click. The buckles bit hard into the wood. To make absolutely certain, she picked up a handy stone and hammered several iron nails home with loud thuds, securing the wooden frame completely solid. The net pouch sank half a meter beneath the waves and stood rock steady under pounding surf. Like a great gaping maw, it waited silently for resources drifting along the current. Once finished, Yanxing brushed dust off her hands with satisfaction. She turned and settled comfortably into the only empty spot beside the cold fire pit. Though the fire had died out, the iron pot still held a little rich, fragrant snake soup left over from the night before. She lifted the pot, took a pleasant sip, and squinted happily. Sea breezes brushed past, carrying the distinctive salty tang of the ocean. Ding! A crisp, delightful system chime echoed inside her head. Automatic salvage net collection successful. Obtained dried plank ×1. Yanxing's eyes lit up, and she spun around. A flat plank rested quietly at the bottom of the net pouch. Yes! She laughed aloud. Days of exhaustion and oppression melted away. No scorching sun beating down, no hook swinging to tear her skin, no gut-wrenching fear. She could sit relaxed, sipping soup, while materials rolled in automatically. This was technology improving life. This was the thrill of effortless advantage. Ding! Less than 10 minutes later, that heavenly notification chimed again. Automatic salvage net collection successful. Obtained waste plastic scrap ×2. Automatic salvage net collection successful. Obtained antiseptic resin ×1. Hearing the continuous alerts, every pore on her body relaxed. Nothing felt more reassuring than watching resource numbers climb steadily on her system panel. Nothing at all, unless they climbed even faster. At this rate, with the salvage net working non-stop day and night, I'll gather enough materials this afternoon to fully expand my raft. Yanxing happily mapped out future development plans. Ideally, I can stockpile enough wood and plastic to build a fully enclosed roofed structure. The weather out here is brutal. Without shelter from wind and rain, I will eventually develop chronic health problems. Lost in grand construction visions, sipping soup and tallying newly acquired materials, Yanxing was suddenly jolted by a changed system alert tone. Instead of the clear ding for successful loot, shrill red flashing beep-beep warning alarms blared. Frowning, she set down her iron pot and opened her system panel. Her private message channel flashed frantically. Opening it revealed a message from a player named Blackstar, whose avatar showed a mutated shark with a wide, fang-bared maw. His message oozed arrogance and menace. Blackstar, don't play dumb. The person who earned the First Blood achievement announced on regional broadcast last night was you, Yanxing, wasn't it? Blackstar, plain and simple. Hand over all the loot you gained from last night's kill plus that hidden weapon. I'll let you join our Frenzied Shark Alliance as a peripheral member and guarantee your survival. Blackstar, you have 10 minutes to reply. Don't be foolish. Our leader has locked your approximate raft coordinates using a special item. Refuse, and you will end up on the seabed tonight. Reading those insufferably arrogant lines, Yanxing's gaze turned icy cold. Frenzied Shark Alliance. She knew the name well. Since dawn, Frenzied Shark had flooded the regional chat. After being transported into this survival game, that group had quickly gathered ruthless survivors through violence, threats, and manipulation. By robbing other players' starting supplies, they built overwhelming military superiority. Take me as a peripheral member? Yanxing let out a cold laugh. His scheme was so obvious it was almost comical. He wanted to rob her supplies and weapon under the pretense of offering protection. It was no different from pre-apocalyptic gangsters extorting protection money, in fact far worse, pure predation. Staring at the menacing avatar, her finger hovered over the virtual light screen. Did they want her belongings? Then they ought to be ready to pay with their lives. Not a single punctuation mark was sent in reply. She clicked Blackstar's profile and hit block without hesitation. To drive home her contempt, she also tapped report harassment. In this lawless survival game, the report button was probably useless, yet it delivered strong symbolic insult. After blocking him, Yanxing took a deep breath and closed the private message interface. She set her dented iron pot down onto the center of the raft with a soft thud. Satisfying as blocking had been, her nerves were tauter than ever. People from Frenzied Shark claim their leader used a special item to lock my approximate coordinates, she muttered softly, scanning the endless blue ocean all around. The sea lay calm, only occasional floating debris drifted past, not even one seabird could be seen. Yet beneath that peaceful surface, fatal danger drew near. Out on this featureless open ocean, her tiny 4-square-meter raft shone like a bright lantern in darkness, far too conspicuous. When another player's raft crashed into hers the previous night, she had experienced firsthand that total exposure. There were no walls, no roof. Anyone drawing close could see everything: her fire pit, water purifier, and piles of supplies sitting inside the salvage net. Wealth must not be displayed openly. That golden rule of pre-apocalyptic survival was a lesson burned into her by blood and suffering. Right now she looked like fat prey in other people's eyes. I cannot wait any longer. I must build walls right away and fully enclose this raft. Quickly opening her backpack and the salvage net's temporary storage, she counted every resource. After 2 hours of tireless work by the automatic salvage net, she had amassed substantial basic materials. Low-grade timber times 32, dried plank times 15, waste plastic scrap times 24, rusted iron nail times 18, antiseptic resin times 5. Seeing those numbers, she felt reassured. Manual building with those resources would only let her put up flimsy, porous wooden barriers around the raft. But she possessed universal synthesis. I will not make simple wooden partitions. I will craft hardened armored walls capable of resisting storm surges and stopping ordinary players from climbing or ramming against me. She mentally sketched blueprints rapidly. Stack planks and plastic sheets, bond them together with antiseptic resin. That boosts hardness while making everything waterproof and corrosion-proof. Iron nails reinforce corners to form a completely sealed safety pod. She pulled all timber, plastic scraps, and resin out of storage and stacked them into a small mound atop the raft. Let's begin. Yanxing drew a deep breath, ready to activate her synthesis talent and upgrade her basic 2x2 raft into a seaborne enclosed safe house. Suddenly, beep. A deafening alarm exploded inside Yanxing's head and echoed across the entire 10086 zone. The originally blue-tinted system light screen blazed scarlet. Players bargaining over wood in regional chat fell dead silent, stunned by the sudden crimson alert. Moments later, bold, enlarged blood-red text popped onto the scarlet screen. Global Regional Emergency Disaster Announcement. Warning. Warning. Natural conditions have undergone irreversible mutation. In 24 hours, the first Great Purge, highly corrosive acid rain, will strike seas worldwide. Acid rain intensity, extreme. It burns flesh and melts ordinary timber and low-grade plastics. Survival hint. Rafts without roofed shelter will suffer catastrophic damage under acid rain. Countdown starts. 23 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. Yanxing's pupils contracted to pinpricks as she stared at the flickering crimson countdown. Acid rain? Extremely corrosive? Death without overhead shelter? The system's malice laid bare. One moment, everyone worried about being looted by other humans. The next, the system threw down an apocalyptic disaster. It intended to eliminate every player unable to construct a roofed shelter within 24 hours. That explains everything, realization dawned on her. That was why players only received tiny 4-square-meter starting rafts, why supply crates mostly contained broken planks and junk plastic. Those materials were never meant for building ships. They were meant for building survival coffins. Yet constructing a roofed safe house demanded multiple times more resources than expanding a flat raft. The regional chat channel erupted into uncontrolled, frantic despair after its brief silence, like a depth charge detonating underwater. Acid rain. Death without a roof. Damn you, system. Why not just strike me dead with lightning right now? I only expanded my raft to 3x3. I haven't built a single wall. How am I supposed to construct a roofed house now? This is pure madness. An impossible task. Building a roofed safe house requires hundreds of planks plus waterproof materials. Help. I don't want to get dissolved by acid rain. Sob. Chat messages scrolled so fast they blurred. Panic spread like plague. Just earlier people feared predatory groups such as Frenzied Shark. Now the system flipped the board and told everyone they might die the next day. Survival instinct soon overpowered terror. Quick-thinking players flooded the trade market, frantically buying supplies. Trade offer: 500 milliliters fresh water for 10 planks. Urgent. Water is useless. Even an ocean of water won't save you without a roof tomorrow. I'll trade 2 portions of snake meat for 20 planks plus antiseptic resin. Trade offer: selling a newly obtained fine-grade iron axe. Only accept waterproof materials and wood. No haggling. Within 10 short minutes, market prices warped catastrophically across the zone. Fresh water and food, once life-saving treasures, plummeted in value as players dumped them desperately. Meanwhile, low-grade timber and waste plastic scraps, items previously seen as space-wasting garbage, skyrocketed in price. Watching the collective chaos unfold, Yen Xing remained calm. She walked toward the automatic salvage net at the raft's stern. While she rested, ate, and dealt with threats from Frenzied Shark, the tireless net had gobbled up floating basic refuse driven by currents. She opened its temporary storage: low-grade timber times 86, dried plank times 42, waste plastic scrap times 55, antiseptic resin times 12. Seeing those abundant numbers, the compulsive hoarder inside her felt deep, solid reassurance. Enough. Even for building a fully enclosed safe house, I have sufficient stock. Her mind raced through calculations. Thanks to her universal synthesis talent, she was not forced to rigidly follow system-provided building formulas. Her material waste rate was extremely low. She planned to reserve half her resources as backup for future upgrades and put the rest on the market. Without hesitation, she opened the trade hall and anonymously posted dozens of trade listings. Item for sale: dried plank times 1, requested, iron ore times 5, or copper ore times 3, or any rare metal resource. Item for sale: waste plastic scrap times 2, requested, high-quality non-spoiled food, or special plant seeds. Item for sale: antiseptic resin times 1, requested, special building blueprints, or advanced mechanical components. Dozens of trade links went live. An hour ago, those asking prices would have earned furious accusations of greedy profiteering. Circumstances had changed entirely. Her listings were instantly locked by desperate, panic-stricken players. Whoa. Someone is selling planks on the trade board. But those prices are outrageous. 1 plank for 5 iron ore. Quit complaining. Iron ore can't block acid rain. If you won't buy, move aside and don't slow others trying to save their lives. Hey seller, can you lower the price for resin? I only have half a blueprint plus 2 liters of water. Ignoring insults in public chat, Yen Xing only watched the flood of incoming private messages. One message caught her eye, sent by a high-level player named Lin Feng. Lin Feng, friend, how much antiseptic resin and planks do you still have? I will buy all of them. Lin Feng, I opened a silver supply crate and obtained 1 early warning radar blueprint plus 3 blocks of high-purity manganese steel. I'll trade those for all your planks and resin. Yen Xing raised an eyebrow. An early warning radar blueprint and high-purity manganese steel? Lin Feng was clearly a formidable player who normally hoarded premium resources. Yet against an indiscriminate natural disaster like acid rain, high-end materials meant nothing unless turned into overhead shelter. Her fingers flew across the virtual keyboard. Yen Xing, I want the blueprint and manganese steel. But I will only give you 20 planks and 5 portions of antiseptic resin. Lin Feng replied instantly, clearly frustrated. Lin Feng, are you price gouging? That radar blueprint is rare. 20 planks aren't even enough to build a doghouse. Yen Xing, suit yourself. Keep your fancy blueprint and watch the acid rain arrive tomorrow. She pretended to close the chat window. In negotiations over life and death stakes, whoever feared death more lost all bargaining power. 3 seconds passed before Lin Feng caved. Lin Feng, you drive a hard bargain. Complete the trade. Ding. Trade successful. Obtained. Early warning radar blueprint times 1, high-purity manganese steel times 3. A quiet, satisfied smile crossed Yen Xing's face listening to the pleasant system chime. That felt amazing. Tricking someone into parting with their most precious treasures in exchange for ordinary scrap materials was more refreshing than drinking ice-cold cola on a sweltering summer day. Over the next several hours, Yen Xing acted as a cold-hearted disaster-era merchant. She firmly rejected moral appeals and sob stories, systematically harvesting the zone's finest resources. Valuable ore, blueprints, medicine, and specialty foods stockpiled by large factions and violent alliances flowed steadily into her inventory under the shadow of death. Ding. Obtained. Vacuum-packed beef ×2. Ding. Obtained. High-grade quartz sand ×10. Ding. Obtained. Green vegetable ×5. After selling off her last surplus plastic scrap for a large-capacity, high-energy storage battery, both her backpack and the salvage net's temporary storage brimmed with high-grade materials. Every possible gain secured. Yanxing closed the trade panel and stretched her limbs. Wailing and arguments still filled regional chat. Many players crumpled in despair, unable to purchase enough planks. Some turned hostile and hurled abuse at each other. None of that concerned her any longer. Sitting beside the fire pit, she took out her newly acquired vacuum-sealed beef and cooked a rich pot of beef soup in her iron pot. Full and sated, she sat cross-legged quietly in the center of the raft, closing her eyes to rest and steady her mental power. Time ticked by second after second. Somewhere along the way, the wind upon the sea died away. A pungent, acrid stench reminiscent of sulfur mixed with rust began to hang in the air. Yanxing opened her eyes and glanced upward toward the sky. The once bright blue firmament was now completely smothered beneath heavy, lead-colored storm clouds. Deep within the layered black clouds, scarlet lightning snaked like living serpents, rumbling with muffled, oppressive thunder. Boom! A deafening crash of thunder exploded directly above the ocean. System panels popped up automatically before every player's eyes, and the flickering countdown finally reached its end. Midnight, Global Zone announcement, countdown complete. The acrid odor spiked to an unbearable intensity in that instant, stinging every breath people took. Yanxing shot to her feet, every muscle tensing at once. She tilted her head and stared fixedly at the suffocating sky. Drip. A single drop fell from thousands of meters above. It was a ghastly shade of sickly green. Piercing the still air, the drop landed precisely on the edge plank beneath Yanxing's feet. Thick white smoke reeking of harsh chemical corrosion billowed upward at once. Yanxing's eyelids twitched violently as she stared at the board. Only 1 second passed. The hard, dry solid plank behaved like butter tossed into boiling water. Its surface charred and blackened immediately. Ghoulish green corrosive bubbles gurgled up, burning straight through to leave a fist-sized hole. Yanxing drew a sharp breath. Before she could react, thunder roared out from beneath the leaden clouds overhead. Crash, crash, crash. A torrential downpour, no, a deluge of acid rain, burst forth like a broken green dam, pounding down across the despair-stricken ocean. The whole world vanished behind a sick green curtain of rain. The sea boiled like hot oil. Countless green raindrops slammed into blue seawater, sending great clouds of stinging white acid mist billowing outward. Everywhere her eyes fell lay the scent of decay and destruction. Scarlet emergency warnings blazed frantically across Yanxing's system panel. Alert! Your raft is suffering heavy-duty acid rain corrosion. Alert! Raft durability dropping. Current durability, 95/88. Listening to the continuous hissing of corrosion and watching durability plummet, Yanxing's heart leaped into her throat. It was far too fast. Against this catastrophe, ordinary wood was more fragile than tissue paper. She immediately opened the regional chat channel. Even mentally prepared, she felt a bone-chill horror watching the surviving player counter in the upper right corner plummet. Current regional survivors, 9854, 8762, 7105. Each jump of the number meant hundreds of lives snuffed out within this cold game. Chat messages scrolled too fast to read, filled with raw, unfiltered despair. Help. The rain burned straight through flesh on contact. I built a hut. I clearly built a hut. Why can't regular wood block this acid rain? The system lied. Normal wood is useless. My walls are melting. My legs are gone. Somebody save me. My raft is sinking. I'm in the water is all acid, gurgle. Horrified cries screamed off the screen, almost audible through plain text. Players who had skimped on supplies or failed to get high-grade anti-corrosion materials, putting up only flimsy wooden shelters, now faced pure hell. Exposed ordinary wood lasted less than 3 minutes under the acid rain before dissolving into black sludge. Survivors without proper protection screamed as they fell into the heavily polluted, bubbling toxic seawater. They had no chance to struggle before being dissolved away. Amid this hellscape, a tiny handful posted messages of narrow escape. Linfeng, anti-corrosion planks and resin work. I made it. Plastic sheets coated with anti-corrosion resin hold up too. Hats off to player Yanxing, those supplies saved my life. Hey man, do you still have anti-corrosion resin? I'll pay 10,000. No, 100,000. Sell me some. Lin Feng, let me board your raft. I'll work myself to the bone for you. Lin Feng, get lost. My roof barely holds as it is. Taking anyone extra will sink the raft. Yanxing read quickly and shut the chat window. She could do nothing for other people right now. Her own raft hung on the razor-thin edge of survival. Alert. Raft durability, 60. Gale-driven green acid rain raged across the open sea. Piles of supplies she had gathered relentlessly over 24 hours spilled onto her battered raft. Anti-corrosion planks times 210, anti-corrosion resin times 85, worn plastic sheets times 150, rusted iron nails times 60. The supplies stacked into a sizable mound. Had other players, scrambling just for single planks, laid eyes on this stockpile, they would have writhed with envy. I need shelter, Yanxing thought. A perfectly safe space. Nothing can get through it. No wind, no rain, no corrosive liquid. A fully enclosed safe house. Driven to the brink by disaster, her compulsion to build ignited completely. She was no longer thinking about simple planks nailed together. Thick anti-corrosion planks formed the main framework. Tough plastic sheets were layered onto both inner and outer plank surfaces, glued tight with anti-corrosion resin. It formed sandwich-style composite corrosion-resistant panels. She needed solid walls, plus a smoothly curved, fully sealed waterproof domed roof. Even the vulnerable raft base would be replaced and reinforced with leftover materials to guarantee zero leaks. Use every last scrap. Hold nothing back. Yanxing tilted her head toward the hellish green sky. Raw, desperate will to survive burned bright in her eyes. Construct now. She roared hoarsely. She pushed her innate talent to its absolute limit. A hammer-like pain crashed inside her skull, and blood trickled from both nostrils. Then blinding, blazing white light burst outward from her hands. Boom! Roaring energy rippled across the sea, pushing poisonous surrounding water away. Within the glow, planks, plastic sheets, resin and nails disassembled, melted, rearranged and wove together as though alive. The clink of joining gears, creak of fitting timber, and setting resin blended into a rousing mechanical symphony. The fierce white glow lasted 5 full seconds. When it faded and green acid rain hammered down once more, the rickety 2 by 2 meter raft was gone entirely from the churning green-tinged sea. In its place stood an incredible floating structure. The howl of gales and the sickening hiss of acid-eating wood were completely muffled, as though snuffed out by an invisible hand. Gasping for air, Yanxing's knees buckled. She dropped heavily onto the floor. Beneath her lay dry, smooth, solid timber. She looked around sharply. Relief flooded her pounding heart. She had succeeded. The tiny raft with barely enough room to turn around was gone. A spacious 5 by 5 meter space of 25 square meters stood in its place, comparable to a modern-day studio apartment. Thick, tightly fitted hardwood walls exuded the faint clean scent of anti-corrosion resin. Seams were sealed perfectly, not a wisp of wind slipping through. She looked upward. No oppressive hell-green sky loomed overhead. Instead, she saw a streamlined corrosion-resistant domed ceiling. Set right in the dome's center was a 1 meter square, reinforced glass skylight built to withstand storms. Tap, tap, tap. Rain that could melt human flesh pounded hard against the resin roof and skylight. It produced nothing more than dull thuds. Not the slightest harm came to the building. Poisonous green water streamed down the dome's curved surface and stayed locked outside. Yanxing slumped against the dry floor, gazing out the skylight at the raging green downpour. Then she laughed aloud. Her laughter echoed inside the spacious safe house, pure elation after cheating death. A home, she whispered softly. Her fingers brushed against the firm dry wall, eyes stinging faintly. In this merciless survival game beset by endless disasters, nothing offered comfort like solid walls and shelter against the elements. This hard-won sense of safety felt almost luxurious. She no longer feared being swept away in her sleep or dissolved by acid rain. Just as she savored this solid peace, the flat mechanical system voice carried an unusually triumphant electronic tone. A blinding golden notification burst into view before Yanxing and across the displays of billions of surviving players worldwide. Highest priority global announcement. Congratulations to player Yanxing, region 10,086. During the acid rain purge disaster, you withstood the catastrophe and independently completed construction of the first safe house. Reward granted. Special blueprint. Hydroponic grow box. Reward granted. +5 to all attributes. Reputation +1000. Yanxing opened world chat and regional chat. Messages flashed so fast they left visual after images. Solo survivor. Yanxing strikes again. She sold planks this morning and built a safe house tonight. She must have some huge advantage. Desperate survivor. Great player Yanxing. I beg you, save me. My raft is sinking. Acid rain has burned my thighs. I will give every blueprint I own. Just let me board your structure. Please. Lin Feng. I am genuinely stunned. I burned through every last trick merely to stay alive. Yanxing, you are the true powerhouse of this zone. Messages overflowed with pleas for rescue, envy, and reverence. The name Yanxing burned itself into every survivor's mind. Meanwhile, the recipient of all this attention set her private message settings to block all stranger messages. The chaos and suffering outside did not concern her. Her full focus locked onto the newly obtained blueprint glowing soft green with life energy. Hydroponic grow box special structure. Description: an oasis of life amid doomsday. Requires no soil. Only clean water and trace nutrients are needed to rapidly cultivate fresh plants. Built-in miniature plant growth lamp included. Construction requirements: plastic sheets ×10, anti-corrosion planks ×5, purified water ×2 liters. Her eyes lit up and her breathing quickened as she read it. Farming stirred a primal hopeful instinct deep inside her. In this world where people killed over moldy bread and surrendered dignity for dirty drinking water, whoever could grow fresh produce held genuine power over life. Vivid visions bloomed in her mind. Plump, sweet juice strawberries, crisp cucumbers still dotted with tiny blossoms, bright green leafy vegetables simmering in hot pot broth. She swallowed hard. This thrill rivaled the triumph of finishing her safe house. I have every required material, and more than enough purified water. She rummaged through her supplies for plastic sheets and anti-corrosion planks, then fetched the plastic bucket beneath her water purifier brimming with clean water. Construct. She activated her talent. This time the process cost only a small amount of mental energy. Gentle white light washed over the space. A 1-meter-long, half-meter-wide grow box made of white corrosion-resistant material materialized in the corner of the safe house. A faint purple-hued LED growth lamp hung above it. A tiny circulating pump hummed softly, moving clear water inside its reservoir. System notice: hydroponic grow box constructed successfully. Detected first time unlock of planting mechanics. Bonus reward: mutated strawberry seed ×1. A tiny red seed no bigger than a sesame seed materialized in her palm, releasing a wonderfully inviting fragrance. She cupped it gently as though holding something priceless. Stepping before the grow box, she followed system instructions and nestled the seed into the specialized nutrient sponge on the growing rack. Purple-hued light bathed the seed. "Grow well," she murmured, hands folded gently, gazing softly at the tiny seed. Through this storm-racked night of corrosive rain, that single small seed represented the foundation for her future maritime stronghold. Dozens of nautical miles away, another vessel pitched violently amid the acid storm. A massive 20-meter wooden sailing ship with 3 huge masts bore thick iron plating and rough anti-corrosion coatings over its exterior. Inside its spacious captain's cabin, local tyrant Shark sprawled across a fur-lined chair. His heavy-featured face twisted with burning rage and greed. Crunch! He squeezed a solid wooden drinking cup so hard it shattered in his grip. Which shards cut his palm open, blood welling forth, yet he paid no mind. His gaze locked onto the golden system announcement glowing on his panel. First ever safe house builder, player Yanxing. Yanxing, Yanxing. He ground the name out between gritted teeth. He had leveraged dozens of followers and exploited weaker players to assemble this sailing ship, barely surviving the acid rain. He had considered himself undisputed overlord of these waters. Now a previously unknown woman stole a rare building reward right under his nose. It felt like a stinging public slap to his pride. Standing nearby, his deputy Scar trembled nervously. "Boss, our men checked. This Yanxing is the trader flooding the marketplace with planks earlier today. She must hold massive stockpiles and possibly rare blueprints." Rage melted into ravenous avarice in Shark's eyes. Excellent. He kicked over the wooden table before him. Loud crashes echoed through the cabin. How dare she draw so much attention in waters I claim? He stared out the cabin window into the pitch-black, storm-churned sea, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. Yan Xing. Your safe house and all your supplies are mine. He whirled toward Scar and roared orders. When the acid rain stops, get every man ready. We move. Tick tick tick, the patter against the resin dome slowly faded away. The bone-chilling hissing sound of corrosion finally died in the wind. Yan Xing rose slowly from the dry, warm wooden floor and rolled her stiff neck. She walked to the center of the safe house and pushed open the heavy wind-proof glass skylight overhead. A sharp, pungent sea breeze flooded in, reeking of sulfur, rust, and some indescribable rot. Yan Xing coughed, quickly covered her mouth and nose with a towel, and leaned out to look. Dawn had broken. The suffocating lead-gray clouds had scattered, and long-absent sunlight spilled across the ocean. Yet the once blue sea now resembled a murky, green-brown toxic soup. Debris of every description floated across its surface. It included plastic buckets half eaten away by corrosion, tattered clothes riddled with holes, and broad stretches of black, stinking char. These were the remains of players who had not survived last night's acid rain, along with their rafts, melted away completely. Yan Xing closed the skylight, sealing off the stench of death outside. She turned and looked at her 25-square-meter safe house, tight-sealed, dry, and warm. Amid this devastated apocalyptic ocean, the sense of absolute safety filled her chest with quiet, comforting warmth. It's good to be alive. A faint, satisfied smile tugged at her lips. She opened the system's regional chat channel. Her eyes narrowed sharply at the survival counter in the top right corner. Current survivors of Zone 10086, 3214, a single 24-hour acid rain disaster, had slashed the zone's original population by 2/3. No joy lingered in the chat, only deep despair. I made it, but acid rain splashed my leg. The flesh rotted right down to bone. Does anyone have anti-inflammatory medicine? Please help me. Stop begging. Nobody even has clean drinking water, let alone medicine. I feel terrible. I have no strength and my gums keep bleeding. I bit into dry bread just now and a tooth came right out with it. Same here. My skin is covered in red rashes. Even light touch sends searing pain shooting through me. What is happening? Scurvy. We haven't eaten fresh fruit or vegetables in days. We're starved of vitamin C. If nothing changes, every last one of us will die. Despair spread across the water like a plague. Acid rain had culled people physically. The complications that followed were the true silent killer. Yan Xing stared at the messages, then closed the holographic screen without expression. She crossed to a delicate contraption in the corner, the soilless hydroponic planter awarded by the system the night before. Carefully, she drew 100 milliliters of pure fresh water from her water purifier and poured it slowly over the special nutrient substrate. Buried there was a special strawberry seed provided by the system. Overnight it had sprouted. A tender green seedling unfurled its leaves, brimming with stubborn life. Against a world drowning in rot and death, that patch of green was priceless. Yan Xing brushed a fingertip gently over its fragile leaves. Grow fast. Once the fruit ripens, I will have real leverage to trade for more supplies. This stark contrast, hell outside, a little oasis inside, thrilled her inner hoarder to her core. Still, she refused to get complacent. She walked to the edge of her raft and carefully inspected the base of her safe house along the treated wooden walls. Alert! Treated wood base durability has decreased. Current durability, 82. Though the acid rain had not breached her shelter, its fierce corrosion had inflicted permanent damage on the wooden foundation. Wood is only wood. Even coated in anti-corrosive resin, it has limits. Her brows drew tight. She wanted an upgraded water recycling system, impact-resistant plating for her safe house, even heavy firepower artillery. All of these required one vital resource, metal. I need large quantities of copper and iron ore. Random drift garbage occasionally yielded rusty nails or scraps of sheet metal, but such trivial amounts were nowhere near enough. Real progress meant buying from the trade hall. Yan Xing opened the trade plaza and searched for copper ore and iron ore. No results appeared. Search results, 0. That could not be right. Even scarce metals should occasionally drop from high-tier supply crates or be fished up by lucky survivors. She checked historical trade logs, and her gaze turned icy. Over the past few hours, every listing for basic or, no matter how high the asking price, had been instantly bought up the moment it appeared. All were bought by members of one group. Every buyer bore the same prefix, Frenzied Shark Brotherhood. They're monopolizing metal resources. Yanxing thought immediately of frenzied shark Blackstar, who had sent her threatening private messages the night before. She scrolled back through regional chat and found proof. An anonymous survivor posted a furious accusation. Everyone stay away from the rocky islet at coordinates 45, 112. The frenzied shark gang are monsters. They seize the zone's only rich ore islet and block access with heavy weapons. They lied to us, saying we would earn supplies for mining. Once we set foot ashore, they forced us to sign labor contracts. We smash rock for 10 hours under scorching sun each day and receive only a mouthful of gritty, dirty water. Refuse to work, and you get crippled and thrown into the sea. My roommate worked himself to death there yesterday. They do not treat us like human beings at all. The channel fell quiet for several seconds before erupting in outrage. Soon, users bearing the frenzied shark prefix flooded the feed. Frenzied shark scar, quit whining. Survival of the fittest. Without our leader giving you a place to work, you useless lot would not even get near rock or. Frenzied shark fong, if you hate it, leave. Plenty of people will take that mouthful of water and work for us. Got a problem? Post your coordinates and we will sail over to sort you out. Ordinary survivors seethed yet dared not push back. In this apocalyptic ocean, those who controlled force and resources made the rules. Sitting on her clean warm floor, Yanxing read through the bitter testimonies. She felt little pity, only cold calculation. Frenzied shark held the ore islet and monopolized metal. If she intended to upgrade her shelter and build artillery, open conflict with the zone's dominant criminal faction was inevitable. Controlling workers through water, cornering the ore market? A cold smile crossed her face. Her gaze drifted toward her water purifier, a machine that produced 500 milliliters of perfectly clean fresh water every 10 minutes, non-stop. They wanted to compete over water? Perfect. Clean fresh water was what she had in abundance. If they intend to rig the market, I will smash their whole game. Without hesitation, she posted a highly provocative offer in the most prominent pinned position of the trade plaza. Seller, Yanxing item, 500 milliliters perfectly filtered drinking water, 0 impurities wanted, times 10 iron ore or times 5 copper ore stock, unlimited. Bring ore and send private messages with proof of goods. Bulk orders welcome. This listing exploded like a bomb inside Zone 10086. While ordinary survivors traded their labor for filthy water, someone claimed an unlimited supply of pure drinking water. It was an open challenge to frenzied shark's water-based power. Less than 10 seconds after posting, her private message alert blared non-stop. Yanxing opened her inbox. At the very top sat a familiar avatar. Frenzied shark Blackstar, so your Yanxing survived last night's encounter and think you are untouchable? Remove your trade offer right now. Only frenzied shark controls, or in Zone 10086. Who do you think you are to muscle in on our business? The next messages came not from Blackstar himself, but from his second-in-command, Frenzied Shark Scar, avatar marked by a single eye patch. The boss had delivered the threat, now his enforcer snarled. Frenzied Shark Scar, Yanxing, you refuse a polite warning and force us to be harsh. Do you really think this unlimited water gimmick lets you do whatever you want out here? Zone 10086 runs by our rules. Our leader has spoken. Pull your listing immediately and hand over your water purifier. Show us you can build useful gear, and we will allot you half a liter of water each day as your survival ration. Half a liter. In 40-degree heat, with constant extreme weather threats, half a liter barely sustained life. It was nothing more than an attempt to chain her. Scar interpreted her silence as fear and grew even more aggressive. Frenzied Shark Scar, cat got your tongue? Do not spit on kindness. We have 3 speedboats. Once we locate your coordinates, this conversation will turn very ugly. We will seize all your supplies. Any men we capture will be crippled and cast overboard to the fish. And you, with your fragile condition, you will be forced into hard labor under our gang. Brutal threats blazed across the blue glowing system interface. This was the apocalypse. With law and morality stripped away, humanity's darkest impulses ran wild. On this lawless ocean, violent monopolists acted as tyrants. Yanxing's expression did not shift. She did not scream or trade insults like an ordinary girl. She understood apocalyptic survival well. There was no point getting angry over people who were as good as dead. Speedboats, she murmured, picking out the critical detail. She closed her inbox and glanced at her repeating crossbow resting on her workbench. At close range against boarders, it was deadly, but its effective range was only 20 to 30 meters. If Frenzied Shark arrived on speedboats, they could attack from 50-60 meters away or ram her safe house at full throttle. Even reinforced wooden walls could not absorb that kinetic impact. Her 25 square meter base would not hold. Insufficient firepower, insufficient range. She assessed the imbalance dispassionately. I need improved defenses and heavy weapons before they find me. Artillery, reinforced base plating, even radar, all demand massive quantities of copper and iron ore. Yet, ore was locked down by Frenzied Shark. Hunting their islet was impossible. She did not even know its exact location. They try to strangle me with their supplies. I will cut off their lifeline instead. She stood and ignored Scar's ranting. She walked back to the hydroponic planter glowing soft purple in the corner. During the 20-plus hours of acid rain, her safe house had remained an isolated haven, sealed off from the wreckage outside. Inside, under lavish watering with pure fresh water, the special strawberry seed had completed its incredible growth cycle. Yanxing knelt and stared at the planter. Beneath broad lush green leaves hung 3 strawberries as big as baby fists. Their flesh burned rich crimson, dotted with tiny seeds, shimmering velvety under purple grow lights. Droplets glistened on their tips, ready to fall. Ripe. Gently she cupped one fruit and plucked it. A soft click sounded. Heavy in her palm, it released an overwhelmingly sweet fragrance redolent of sunshine and rich soil, filling the confined room. She breathed it in deeply. In a world saturated with sulfur, rust and rot, this scent was incomparably precious. Regional chat still overflowed with suffering. I lost another tooth. My mouth fills with blood. Can anybody help me? My skin itches terribly. Scratching draws blood with every peel. I don't want to die. Anyone have vegetables? Even moldy leaves. I will trade all my lumber. No hope. Nobody has fresh produce out on the open sea. Scurvy. We will just keep dying. Despair and agony washed over Zone 10086, a slower slaughter than acid rain. And the antidote rested in Yanxing's hand. Frenzied Shark controls labor through or because ore fuels upgrades. She looked down at the strawberry, sharp calculating amusement in her eyes. What I hold saves lives. Next to survival, raw rock means nothing. She returned to her console. Scar's angry messages still waited. Yanxing ignored him completely, tapped block, then report harassment. A soft chime brought peace. Keep dreaming aboard your speedboat. She reopened the trade plaza and activated the listing interface. She placed the ripe crimson strawberry inside the system scanner. Item scan complete. Mutated sweetheart strawberry, perfect grade, highly concentrated vitamin C and trace elements. Consuming it instantly cures mild debuffs such as scurvy and restores stamina. Satisfied, she enabled anonymous posting. Secrecy was wise. While she was not afraid of Frenzied Shark, thousands of desperate survivors hunting for her location would spell trouble. Her fingers flew across the hologram as she composed her listing. Item for sale. Fresh mutated strawberry ×1 high residential full angle photo attached effect. Instantly cure scurvy. Massive vitamin C replenishment wanted. Copper ore. Iron ore, rare metals only. No lumber, no plastic. Trade rules. Private message with your offer. Highest bid wins. No credit, no haggling. Scammers stay away. She attached the system-generated high-definition render of the luscious red strawberry and clicked Confirm Listing. Ding, your offer has been pinned to the top of Regional Trade Plaza. Yanxing poured herself a glass of purified fresh water and sipped calmly as she watched the screen. The regional chat feed, normally scrolling non-stop with cries and curses, froze. 3 full seconds passed, thousands of users fell utterly silent. Then messages exploded forth like a broken dam. Boom. It was as if a massive explosive had been hurled straight into a lifeless, stagnant deep pool of water. After a suffocating 3-second pause, the global chat channel for Sector 10086 erupted into an unprecedented information tsunami. Messages scrolled so fast the human eye could not track them, and the system briefly lagged under the sudden flood of data. Strawberries? Am I hallucinating? Actual fresh strawberries. Good heavens, there are still water droplets on them. Green calyxes, bright red flesh. I haven't seen any color besides murky seawater for an entire week. I'll trade 20 wooden planks. Beg you to sell it to me. My teeth are falling out and I don't want to die. Quit lowballing her with that pitiful offer. Anonymous benefactor, I've got 50 iron ore chunks plus 10 liters of purified water. Message me privately. 80 copper ores. I just looted them from a supply crate, all for you. Panic had fully taken hold. Every player tormented by scurvy had completely lost their rationality. To these people clinging tenuously to life, the high-definition photo of the strawberry was far more than curative medicine. It stood as a remnant of civilization, a last shred of dignity tied to the ordinary comforts of the modern world, the simple joy of biting into fresh fruit. This overwhelming visual and psychological blow shattered every last mental barrier holding the survivors together. Yinxing leaned back comfortably against soft pillows atop her dry, warm wooden bed, watching her private message feed flash relentlessly. Ding 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 ding. Message alerts blared incessantly, an urgent, frantic clamor. Yinxing swiped away countless worthless offers, paltry stacks of lumber, scraps of plastic, or vials of cloudy, contaminated water being passed off as valuable goods. Her gaze locked onto reclusive lone wolf veteran players who rarely made their presence known in public channels. Out on these endless ocean waters, countless skilled survivors kept to themselves. They avoided forming factions, spent every waking hour scavenging materials and opening loot crates, hoarding rare supplies they would never normally put up for trade. Now faced with a lethal illness, they had no choice but to surrender their most precious stockpiles. Anonymous Player A, I offer 100 iron ores, 30 refined copper ingots, plus a blueprint, superior repeating crossbow modification. This is my entire inventory, in exchange for your strawberry. Yinxing raised an eyebrow. The offer was remarkably generous, more than enough to reinforce her safe house with impact-resistant outer plating. Still, she held off replying. Fresh private messages kept pouring in, each bid growing more extravagant by the second. Then a familiar username popped up on her screen, paired with a tone thick with biting sarcasm. Venom Fong. This was none other than the core enforcer of the Shark faction, the man who had arrogantly threatened to sail out and brutalize ordinary players in the public channel days prior. A cold, amused smirk tugged at Yinxing's lips as she clicked open his message. The once domineering Venom Fong now sounded weak and desperate beyond concealment. Venom Fong, whoever is selling the strawberry, let us speak plainly. I've contracted scurvy, my gums bleed nonstop, and I can barely summon the strength to move. Venom Fong, I know the Shark faction has been monopolizing mineral resources, and you publicly condemned our operations. But survival outweighs grudges right now. Venom Fong, I siphoned away a stockpile of minerals over the past few days. 200 iron ore chunks, 150 copper ores, plus 50 scarce lead ingots are yours. Venom Fong, if you sell the strawberry to me, our transaction stays between us. I will also throw in a partial blueprint, premium light naval artillery design. Yinxing's eyes lit up reading the lengthy list of traded goods. Nothing embodied irony more than this exact moment. The Shark faction fancied themselves iron-fisted overlords, hoarding all metallic resources across the sector and treating ordinary survivors like disposable labor. Yet when confronted with a vital survival resource and the deadly threat of scurvy, their most trusted lieutenant had secretly embezzled faction resources to grovel for mercy at Yinxing's feet. This so-called ironclad alliance is nothing more than a fragile joke waiting to crumble, Yinxing muttered coldly. Mockery aside, business was business. 200 iron ores, 150 copper ores, 50 lead ingots, plus the incomplete artillery blueprint. This was a massive, extremely profitable deal that would remove every obstacle standing in the way of her facility upgrades. Yinxing typed her reply without hesitation, still hidden under an anonymous tag. Anonymous Yinxing, deal. But mark my warning, attempt any deception, and you will never taste fresh produce with intact leaves for the rest of your life. Venom Fong replied instantly, his tone oozing relief and subservience. Venom Fong, I would never dare cross you. I swear to keep this transaction completely confidential. Let us finalize the trade. I can barely hold on much longer. A crisp system chime echoed through the space. The trade concluded instantly, and the strawberry icon pinned at the top of the trading hall vanished entirely. Wails erupted across the global channel. Countless players who had failed to secure the fruit slammed their fists in frustration, and several broke down crying openly in the chat. Yinxing paid their despair no mind. Cross-legged on her cozy bed, she watched the numbers for her stored materials surge sharply in her inventory. Iron ore times 200 copper ore times 150 lead ingot times 50 partial blueprint. Premium light naval artillery times 1 combined with scattered metals she had acquired through previous trades. Her total reserves of base metal resources had now surged well past the triple-digit mark. I'm finally no longer scraping by with empty supplies, Yinxing breathed out slowly. A profound sense of security washed over her, the calm confidence that came with having ample reserves tucked away safely. The thrill of trading a casual homegrown fruit to drain a violent regional gang member's hidden fortune sent a satisfying tingle down her spine. Gurgle. All the back-and-forth bargaining had left her parched. She twisted around and picked up a second strawberry she had set aside on a wooden plate. Beneath the lamplight, its crimson flesh glowed like a polished ruby. Yinxing bit down gently. Crunch. Ripe, tender flesh split cleanly between her teeth. Rich, tart sweet juice burst across her tongue the moment the fruit ruptured. The cool, sweet liquid slid down her throat, washing away days of built-up exhaustion and stagnant foul air trapped inside her safe house. This is incredible, Yinxing narrowed her eyes, savoring every mouthful slowly. Outside her walls lay a hellish wasteland where people murdered one another over moldy scraps of bread. Inside her sealed, temperature-controlled shelter, she bit into juicy fresh strawberries while staring at a stockpile of minerals far larger than she could immediately use. Her urge to hoard supplies felt fully satisfied in this moment. After swallowing the last bite of fruit, she carefully licked stray juice from her lips and tossed the tiny green calyx into a nearby waste bin. With this massive stockpile of metal now at her disposal, she could officially launch the industrial upgrades for her base. Shark, I suggest you build your vessels sturdily. My newly manufactured artillery shells will not be gentle on your ships. A cold glint of sharp hostility flickered across Yinxing's eyes. Dozens of nautical miles away, atop a jagged rocky islet belonging to the Shark faction territory, blazing sunlight scorched the barren land relentlessly. Dozens of ragged, emaciated ordinary survivors were herded like livestock by armed enforcers wielding machetes, forced to chip away at rock inside open-air mining pits. Every miner wore a lifeless expression, dark blood seeping from their inflamed gums due to untreated scurvy. In a shaded canvas tent nearby, the Shark faction's leader, known simply as Shark, identifiable by the brutal scar slicing across his face, patrolled the resting area for his men with a stormy expression. Scurvy spreading through his ranks had drastically weakened the combat effectiveness of his enforcers, stoking his seething irritation. Blackstar, where is Venom Fong? Shark kicked a rusted metal barrel against the ground and demanded coldly. Boss, Venom Fong claimed his symptoms worsened and went to lie down in his quarters. I spotted him staring intently at his system interface a short while ago, acting suspiciously. Blackstar hurried forward to report. Shark's brows furrowed sharply. Sharp instinct sounded an alarm in his mind. He strode quickly toward the wooden cot assigned exclusively to Venom Fong. The bunk was empty. Shark ripped open Venom Fong's foul-smelling blanket in a fit of irritation. His gaze froze abruptly, locking onto something wedged into a crack between the wooden planks of the bed frame. It was a fresh fragment of green strawberry calyx, still vibrant with living plant vitality. On this island where people had resorted to gnawing on tree bark to survive, this splash of vivid green burned brighter than a distress flare against the bleak landscape. Shark froze on the spot. In the next instant, his face darkened to an enraged purple, thick veins bulging across his forehead like writhing earthworms. He knew exactly what this fragment meant. Everyone in the sector had witnessed the frenzy over the astronomically priced strawberry in the global chat channel only moments earlier. He had never imagined the buyer would be his most trusted core subordinate. Not only had Venom Fong hoarded massive quantities of faction minerals in secret, he had used those stolen resources to aid the very woman Shark had ordered his forces to hunt down and suppress. Crash! Shark kicked the wooden bed hard enough to shatter its frame, splinters flying in every direction. Damn it! A bestial roar of unrestrained fury boomed across the entire mining islet. Every enslaved miner and patrolling enforcer jolted in terror, their heads snapping toward the tent. Shark's fingers squeezed the small green calyx so tightly his knuckles creaked audibly, his eyes blazing crimson with rage. You dare steal my resources? You dare fund that woman with minerals belonging to my faction? He snapped his head toward Blackstar, who stood trembling in place, his voice dripping with murderous hostility. Pass down my orders immediately. Hang Venom Fong and bleed him slowly as punishment for his betrayal. Locate the woman selling strawberries at all costs, track down her coordinates. I will capture her with my own hands and make her pay dearly for this affront. Droplets of blood dripped steadily from Venom Fong's suspended body onto the rough stone ground of the mining islet. Already weakened severely by scurvy, his body was now covered in whiplash marks, leaving him without the energy even to scream in agony. Shark tossed aside his blood-stained whip and marched over to the holographic public channel display, his features twisted with malice akin to a predatory shark picking up the scent of blood. Shark Global announcement: listen closely, all survivors in this sector. I am the leader of the Shark faction. Shark Global announcement: the individual named Yin Xing has violated the rules enforced by our faction. She is now marked as our top priority target for elimination. Shark Global announcement: anyone who provides her precise coordinates will receive 500 milliliters of purified water and 10 refined iron ingots as reward. Anyone who captures her alive will be promoted directly to faction deputy leader with unrestricted access to our supply vaults. The blood-soaked bounty notice plunged the chat channel into dead silence after being posted. Chaos erupted across the sector moments later. Whoa, Shark issued a global kill order. What exactly did this woman do to earn such deadly retaliation? Being captured alive by the Shark faction in this lawless ocean apocalypse is a fate far crueler than dying from acid rain exposure. Her recklessness brought this on herself. Flaunting rare goods openly is reckless and foolish. People will do anything for survival and power. The deputy leader position is a priceless prize. Who wants to form a squad to search the open seas for her signal? Human nature laid itself bare under the lure of lavish rewards. Some survivors felt pity for the wanted woman, others gloated over her misfortune. But far more were hungry opportunists, blinded by greed, ready to hunt her down without hesitation. Back inside the mining tent, Shark pulled a strange compass artifact from his inner storage pouch with a cold smirk. Item: Hatred Tracking Compass Special Grade Effect. Locks onto a target with whom the user has sustained hostile conflict. Only displays a general ocean heading. Effective scanning radius: 50 nautical miles. The compass's red needle spun wildly before locking firmly toward the southeast. Open ocean waters to the southeast, no large land masses nearby. Shark licked his lips, cruel excitement blazing in his expression. He turned toward 3 fully armed, burly enforcers standing behind him. Scorpion, take 2 men aboard the reinforced high-speed assault boat. Shark tossed the compass to the scarred man leading the group. Night is falling and the assault boat's speed is unmatched. She wields a repeating poison crossbow effective up to roughly 20 to 30 meters. Maintain a safe distance as you approach. Scorpion let out a sinister chuckle and checked the mechanism on his forged premium harpoon gun with practiced ease. Rest easy, boss. She is merely a lone survivor. We will circle her vessel from a distance and wear her down until she can no longer resist. Bring her back alive. Shark's tone sharpened with ravenous greed. If she can cultivate fresh strawberries, she must possess a god-tier item or cultivation ability. Force her to surrender whatever powers she holds before dealing with her fate. Understood. Minutes later, the assault boat's engine roared to life. The iron-reinforced vessel cut through the dark ocean waves like a sharp black blade, speeding relentlessly toward the southeast horizon. Meanwhile, Yin Xing remained oblivious to the manhunt closing in on her safe house. She was reclining peacefully inside her sealed shelter, sipping warm brewed tea steeped from dried strawberry leaves. Having not opened the public chat channel at all, she was far too occupied with her own work. The core principle of stockpiling resources? Never grow complacent with the safety of your shelter. Though the newly acquired mountain of minerals greatly boosted her reserves, she could not afford to let her guard down. That gang will fly into a violent rage once they discover their stolen resources were traded away. I cannot afford to wait passively for their retaliation. Yin Xing set down her mug and fixed her gaze on a blueprint. She had obtained it in an earlier trade with the lone survivor Lin Feng. Blueprint: Basic Early Warning Radar. With abundant metals now available, she could finally construct the device outlined on the schematic. Yin Xing piled the iron ore, copper ore and high-purity manganese steel obtained from Venom Fong onto the floor without delay. Let's begin. Time to witness the power of industrial technology. Yin Xing drew in a deep breath, closed her eyes. She channeled her unique innate ability. Synthesize. Mental energy surged outward in a powerful wave, draining enough stamina to make her features pale slightly. This marked her first attempt to synthesize high-precision electronic equipment with intricate internal components. Blinding white light swallowed the pile of raw ore and blueprint documents. Grinding metal friction and precise gear meshing sounds echoed through the sealed safe house. Inside the luminous field, crude ores were purified and molded into precise shapes, copper wire twisted into delicate circuitry pathways. Manganese steel formed the durable outer casing and external detection antenna. When the light faded completely, a heavy industrial device with distinct cyberpunk styling stood fixed securely onto her work console. A slender metal antenna extended upward through the reinforced ceiling to protrude into the open air above the safe house. Item: superior-grade basic sonar early warning radar optimized via innate synthesis. Functionality: emits continuous, all-weather sonar pulses. Any moving object larger than 2 meters within a 5 nautical mile radius will appear on the scanning interface. Built-in friendly hostile identification system. Yinxing pressed the activation switch with her finger. Low, steady resonant hum. The radar's vintage circular display flickered to life, a green scanning beam rotating clockwise. Soft, rhythmic beeps sounded across the screen, the display filled with calm green indicators signifying complete safety in surrounding waters. A huge relief, Yinxing murmured as she stared at the functional radar. Her persistent anxiety over insufficient defensive firepower had been significantly eased. Amid the pitch black, disorienting open ocean, a radar system granted her an omniscient aerial perspective over her surroundings. No hostile intruder could sneak up to her shelter undetected as the unknown attacker had done on her first night stranded at sea. With the radar fully operational, Yinxing's mood lifted. She hummed a quiet tune while reaching for an old iron pot to prepare seafood and vegetable stew for a late-night meal. The moment her fingers brushed the pot's handle, urgent, shrill alarm blares non-stop. Soft background radar tones morphed abruptly into piercing warning sirens, and red hazard lights flashed frantically across every surface inside the safe house. Yinxing's relaxed demeanor vanished in an instant, every trace of ease wiped clean from her expression. She sprinted to the radar screen in a single fluid motion. 3 glaring red blips appeared roughly 4 nautical miles to the northwest of her safe house's central green marker. They were advancing at an unnaturally high speed in a tight triangular formation straight toward her coordinates. Marine monsters are out of the question, Yinxing analyzed with icy composure. Sea creatures never traveled in perfectly straight trajectories, nor maintained disciplined combat formation patterns. Speed this high means a motorized assault boat, without a doubt. Yinxing glanced out at the pitch-black night sea, a cold smirk spreading slowly across her lips. Late at night, 3 men raced straight toward her coordinates aboard a speedboat, their intentions plain for all to see. Shark's retaliation had come far sooner than she had anticipated. Do they really take me for an easy target? Yinxing did not panic and reach for her limited-range repeating poison crossbow. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the heavy iron ingots and scrap metal piled inside her backpack. Since the enemies had fast watercraft, she could not allow them to close in on her safe house or launch a boarding assault. She would turn her wooden raft into a spiked iron fortress. Try boarding my raft. Let us see if your flesh is tougher than my steel. Rolling up her sleeves, Yinxing hauled the hefty iron ingots one by one to the edge of the raft's deck outside the safe house. The sea wind howled fiercely through the night. Waves crashed against the anti-corrosion wooden base with dull, rumbling thuds. Crouching at the outermost edge of the deck, Yinxing let the frigid seawater soak her trouser hems. She neatly lined iron ingots, rusted sheet metal, and shards of hardened behemoth bone along the waterline on the side of the raft facing the incoming foes. Synthesize. Yinxing pressed both hands firmly onto the raw materials, cold metallic glimmers reflecting in her eyes. No blinding white flash accompanied the process. Having deliberately suppressed the synthesis light, the transformation unfolded silently and lethally. Pale blue luminescence swirled beneath the black seawater. Shrouded by the waves, the iron and bone stretched reshaped. They sharpened into jagged fangs anchored firmly along the raft's base, their razor tips concealed just below the ocean surface. Armor-piercing anti-collision barricade fine-grade, forged from high-density, refined iron and behemoth bone. Its razor edges can slice clean through the hull plating of ordinary metal boats with ease, boasting excellent concealment. Once the work was finished, Yinxing brushed iron rust off her palms and retreated calmly into the warm safe house. She even cranked the warm yellow lamp inside the safe house up to maximum brightness out of sheer defiance. Amid the pitch-black, lifeless ocean, her safe house glowed like an alluring treat laid out to bait greedy scavengers. It was quietly waiting for the vermin to swim into the trap. Several nautical miles away, engine roars tore through the night breeze. Scorpion stood at the bow of the speedboat, icy seawater slapping his coarse, fleshy cheeks. He shivered from the cold, yet greed burned hot and bright in his eyes. "Look, there's a light up ahead," the helmsman shouted excitedly, pointing toward the distance. Scorpion narrowed his eyes. Sure enough, a warm, vivid yellow glow bobbed gently with the waves on the far edge of the endless darkness. In such brutal weather where even torches could barely stay lit, that light felt like a beacon to paradise. Damn it, she actually built a powered safe house. Scorpion swallowed hard, overcome with burning jealousy. She dares leave her lights on full blast, acting as if this open ocean is her private domain. She did not even cover her windows. This is nothing short of suicidal. A subordinate gripping a harpoon gun sneered, "Boss, she must think she is invincible. We'll rush over, shatter her windows with harpoons, and drag her out onto the water. Men, prepare to board." Scorpion drew his gleaming broadsword and slashed it sharply through the air. "Push the engine to full throttle. Ram straight onto her deck before she can aim that crossbow of hers." A deafening roar erupted from the speedboat's motor, black smoke billowing from its exhaust pipe. The craft shot forward like a black arrow, carving a long white wake across the sea as it charged headlong for the warm glow. 50 meters. 30 meters. 20 meters. The target was right in front of him. Scorpion could even spot the tidy wooden flooring inside through the transparent windscreen. Trembling with excitement, he licked his parched lips and roared, "Ram her." He never got to finish the sentence. The instant the speeding boat was seconds away from slamming into the edge of Yan Xing's raft. Cold metallic glints hidden beneath the black waves surged upward, menacing and deadly. A shrill, teeth-gritting screech of metal tearing apart exploded across the dark sea. There was no shower of splintered wood as Scorpion had imagined when the raft was crushed by impact. The moment the speedboat made contact with the raft's perimeter, it was akin to a wild boar charging headfirst into a wall of upright steel spears. Hidden under the waves, the armor-piercing anti-collision barricade unleashed its brutal fangs under the overwhelming force of the boat's momentum. The dense iron tips pierced the thin sheet metal of the speedboat's bow as effortlessly as a blade cutting through soft tofu. Driven forward by sheer inertia, the boat was caught fast on the barricade's barbs before its hull was split wide open and crumpled upward. Crunch, boom. Scorpion had stood at the bow, broadsword raised to be the first to board the raft. He barely managed a fragmented scream before the violent jolt sent him flying through the air like a stone hurled from a catapult. He spun twice midair before crashing into the freezing seawater with a heavy splash alongside the two other crew members. All three plunged into the dark waves one after another. Gurgling bubbles rose to the surface as seawater flooded their mouths and nostrils instantly. One subordinate met terrible luck. His thigh scraped violently against one of the steel barbs as he fell. It left a deep, bone-deep gash on his leg. Thick blood diffused rapidly through the surrounding seawater. "Help! Someone help me! My leg!" The man flailed frantically in the water, screaming in agonizing pain. Scorpion was dazed and disoriented from the brutal fall. He struggled back to the surface, spitting out bitter seawater. He stared in horror at the wreckage before him. The speedboat they had counted on as their greatest asset was now a mangled heap of scrap metal impaled on the steel spikes. Illuminated by the warm light spilling from the safe house, he finally got a clear look at what had nearly killed them. Rows of cold, razor-sharp steel barbs lining the entire wooden foundation of the raft. How is this possible? Scorpion's eyes bulged with rage and terror, his mind reeling in shock. Where did she get so much refined iron to build such defenses? This is a floating fortress. Scorpion was still trapped in shock and terror when a faint creak cut through the night air. The transparent skylight atop the safe house slowly slid open from the inside. Yan Xing leaned out halfway, staring down indifferently at the three men floundering helplessly in the frigid water. She wore clean, warm cotton loungewear, her long black hair drifting softly in the night wind. No trace of panic or fear marred her fair, delicate features, only icy detachment, as if watching condemned souls. In her hands, a matte black repeating poison crossbow was raised steadily toward the men. Its bolt tips glinted with an eerie cyan hue, a grim reaper's death warrant beneath the lamplight. The boss was correct, Yan Xing said in a clear, chilling tone that sent cold creeping into their bones. The sea winds grow fierce late at night. Since you've come all this way, you will not be leaving these waters alive. Wasting no unnecessary words, Yan Xing pulled the trigger without hesitation. Two soft whooshes cut through the wind. The faint sound of the bolts in flight was swallowed entirely by the howling gale. In the next heartbeat, the wounded man screaming for help fell silent forever. A sea kite venom-tipped bolt buried itself cleanly through his left eye socket and straight into his brain. A second bolt pinned another subordinate to a floating plank through the throat just as he tried to pull himself upward to safety. The sea kite's neurotoxin acted with devastating speed. The two men did not even have time for convulsions. Their skin darkened immediately as their bodies stiffened, sinking slowly into the dark ocean with thin trails of blood bubbling upward. Scorpion froze completely, clinging tightly to a broken piece of the boat's wreckage as his body shook uncontrollably. His teeth chattered violently from cold and dread. What kind of woman was this? No screams, no accusations, not even a flicker of hesitation. She killed as casually as slaughtering livestock. This was no helpless prey waiting to be plundered. She was a brutal killer who had crawled straight out of the depths of hell. Mercy. Spare my life. Scorpion's mental defenses crumbled the second the crossbow barrel locked onto his forehead. He abandoned all thoughts of resistance, weeping bitterly amid the freezing waves. I was forced into this mission by Shark. I had no choice. I'll serve you faithfully. I'll dive for supplies and salvage whatever you need. Just spare my life. Yan Xing watched his pathetic display of groveling with undisguised disgust. She had seen countless men like him in the apocalypse, cruel and ruthless when holding power. Quick to grovel and beg for mercy the moment misfortune struck, devoid of any integrity. Be quiet. Yan Xing uttered only 2 words, and Scorpion clamped his mouth shut instantly. He whimpered weakly like a strangled animal. I will ask questions, and you will answer them. The crossbow never wavered an inch. Its aim fixed steadily on his brow. One lie, and the next bolt will pierce your eye. Understood. I will tell you everything I know without omission. Scorpion nodded frantically. He was terrified of meeting an immediate death. Were you Shark's advanced scouting party? Yan Xing questioned. Exactly. Shark used a tracking compass to lock onto your general coordinates and sent us to survey your position. How many men does he command? What weapons and equipment does his group possess? Scorpion's eyes darted briefly, tempted to withhold information. But the glowing cyan venom on the crossbow bolt forced him to spill every detail at once. 13 fully armed men, all seasoned killers with blood on their hands. Shark got his hands on a high-tier blueprint somehow and pulled every resource his faction owned to build a 20-meter, 3-masted wooden sailing ship. The vessel carries torches and a catapult, with its entire hull reinforced with sheet metal plating. A 20-meter, 3-masted ship clad in iron plating? Yan Xing's pupils narrowed sharply. At this early stage of the apocalypse, when most survivors could barely scrape by on simple wooden rafts, constructing such a large sailing vessel was proof of Shark faction's substantial reserves. It was stark evidence that plunder and exploitation remained the fastest way to hoard resources in the early days of this ruined world. When will they arrive? Tomorrow at dawn. Scorpion pleaded, a faint spark of hope lingering in his voice. That ship is far too powerful for your small safe house to withstand. You should sail away while you still can. I swear I will not report your location to Shark if you let me go. Yan Xing looked down on him, his lips blue and numb from the bitter seawater. After extracting every scrap of intelligence from the captive, her face showed none of the panic or urgency Scorpion had expected to see. Instead, an unsettling calm settled over her features. 13 men, a 20-meter ironclad ship, arrival at dawn. Yan Xing repeated the key phrases quietly, as if calculating precise battle parameters in her mind. She then glanced at the shivering man floating in the water and curled her lips into a cold smirk. I appreciate the thorough information. Scorpion brightened with desperate hope, then you will spare. The crossbow string snapped with a crisp twang. A streak of cyan cut across the night darkness. Scorpion's words died in his throat as his eyes bulged outward in shock. The poison bolt embedded itself deep within his throat. I am fiercely protective of what belongs to me, and I will never tolerate anyone threatening my home. Yan Xing stared at his lifeless, rapidly darkening corpse with an emotionless tone. Since you came here to steal and destroy, you have no need to return and relay information. Scorpion's body slumped limply downward, vanishing beneath the ocean surface for good. The 3 aggressive raiders had never even set foot on Yan Xing's raft before becoming nourishment for the sea creatures. Stowing her repeating crossbow and closing the skylight, Yan Xing stepped out onto the raft deck. The sea wind still cut sharply through her clothes, yet her chest burned with resolve and determination. She walked to the raft's edge and studied the speedboat wreckage pinned against the steel barricades. For a hoarder and scavenger like her, enemy incursions were never merely threats. They were free deliveries of valuable materials. She placed her palm against the twisted metal debris. Decompose. A wash of system-white light flashed, breaking the wreckage into countless glowing particles that streamed directly into her backpack inventory. Along with dozens of basic resources, including sheet metal, plastic, and timber, a sharp chime sounded from the system interface. Ding! Decomposition complete. Obtained rare material, low-grade gunpowder ×5. Obtained special industrial component, discarded engine tubing ×1. Yanxing's eyes lit up the instant she read the item names. Gunpowder. Engine tubing. These two components were almost impossible to find inside ordinary floating supply crates. Only obtainable through decomposing high-tier vehicles such as this speedboat. Clutching the small sacks of smoky gunpowder in her palm, Yanxing lifted her gaze toward the eastern sky, where faint streaks of dawn were beginning to tint the horizon. Daybreak was drawing near. Within a handful of hours, Shark's massive 20-meter ironclad sailing ship would crest the edge of the ocean horizon. A crossbow will never leave so much as a scratch on an iron-plated ship of that scale, Yanxing muttered to herself as sea winds tangled her hair, stoking a fierce, burning resolve in her gaze. The word flee did not exist in her vocabulary. When her home was threatened, there was only one viable solution: obliterate every invader, sinking their ship along with every man aboard it. If they insist on marching to their own deaths, Yanxing turned on her heel and strode back toward the workbench inside the safe house, retrieving the partial fine-grade small naval cannon blueprint she had traded for from Venom months prior. A fanatical glint, born from every base builder's hunger for heavy firepower, blazed bright in her eyes. Then all of them will stay trapped forever at the bottom of this ocean. Those bastards in Shark's faction think they rule these waters? A message flashed rapidly across the regional public chat channel. Keep your voice down. Have you not seen Shark's official announcement? He plans to broadcast a public reckoning against this Yanxing woman live across the global channel at sunrise tomorrow. It is such a waste. She managed to grow fresh strawberries, so she must hold a massive stockpile of valuable goods. All of it will end up seized by Shark now. There is nothing to mourn here. Possessing rare resources without adequate strength is a fatal flaw in this apocalyptic world. Flaunting your wealth openly is nothing short of reckless. Exactly. Shark commands a 20-meter, 3-masted ship reinforced with iron plating, a mobile fortress no survivor can hope to defeat. I will tune into tomorrow's live broadcast to witness what becomes of this resourceful survivor. The chat channel hummed with the morbid numbness and grim fascination typical of humanity struggling to survive amid the end of the world. Some mourned the impending fall of a talented survival crafter, others envied her stockpiled supplies, while the majority waited eagerly to watch the one-sided bloodshed unfold the next morning. Meanwhile, the woman at the center of this brewing storm paid no attention whatsoever to the chaotic public chat. The noise and chaos of the outside world were entirely sealed off by the 25-square-meter safe house she called home. Yanxing stood before her cluttered crafting workbench, fine bloodshot veins spiderwebbing across her tired eyes, her expression sharp and unyielding. It was the ferocious protectiveness of a cornered hoarder guarding her stockpile. Pushed to the brink of desperation. Crossbow bolts cannot pierce the hull of a 20-meter ironclad vessel, Yanxing chewed on her thumbnail while thinking aloud. They operate a functional catapult. If they close within several dozen meters, boulders hurled by that siege weapon will shatter my transparent skylights and wooden dome instantly. If the roof caves in, their flaming torches will turn my safe house into a blazing furnace. Yanxing shook her head hard, casting the horrific vision out of her mind. No way. Absolutely not. This place held her warm, dry wooden bed. The water and food she'd stockpiled through endless hardship, plus a thriving strawberry plant that had just borne fruit. It was her sole sanctuary in the apocalypse, the very foundation of her sense of safety. Anyone who laid a hand on her home would have to get through her first. If the firing range falls short, I'll extend it. If penetration power isn't enough, I'll bring out heavy firepower. Like a desperate gambler, Yanxing ripped open her system inventory in one sharp motion. She slammed the high-grade small cannon blueprint incomplete scroll, traded earlier for supplies with Viper, flat onto the operating console. So, what if it's only a fragment blueprint? I'd like to see what this scrap of paper can do against the fundamental rules of universal synthesis. A clattering crash echoed through the room. Yanxing emptied every last scrap of metal she owned from her inventory without hesitation. 250 iron ore chunks, 160 copper ore chunks, 50 lead ingots. A discarded engine pipe stripped from the speedboat not long ago, and 5 volatile batches of low-grade gunpowder. The deadliest component of them all. Staring at the mountain of metal piled alongside the blueprint, Yan Xing drew a deep breath. System, spare me the excuses about insufficient materials or mismatched formulas. She pressed both palms hard against the frigid metal pieces, her eyes bloodshot blazing red from overwhelming strain. All I need is a cannon powerful enough to blow that rickety wooden ship to smithereens. Synthesize it now. Boom. Along with her roar of desperation ringing inside her head, the universal synthesis talent surged to its absolute peak. This was nothing like the soft, localized bursts of white light she'd witnessed before. A ferocious storm of raw energy erupted instead. Blinding white light detonated inside the cramped safe house, piercing the windproof glass skylight and illuminating the pitch-black sea outside as bright as daylight. A low, grating hum vibrated through every inch of air within the building. The incomplete cannon blueprint burned to ashes instantly amid the radiance. Yet its digital data spread out like a massive net, wrapping tightly around the mound of metal materials. It hurts badly. Yan Xing let out a muffled groan, her knees buckling as she nearly collapsed to the floor. Her mental energy was being drained far too rapidly and violently. This synthesis spanned an enormous technological leap, jumping straight from melee cold weapons to heavy thermal ordnance, plus the highly unstable explosive gunpowder included in the build. Her brain felt as though it was being drilled into relentlessly, her nerve fibers torn apart and forcibly rewoven one by one. Warm blood welled from her nostrils, 2 streaks of crimson trickling down her ashen cheeks. I can't pass out. I must not pass out. She clamped her jaw shut so firmly she bit through her own tongue, filling her mouth with the sharp metallic tang of blood. Bracing one hand against the workbench, her trembling other hand reached for a mug of strong brewed strawberry leaf tea sitting nearby. Ignoring its scalding temperature, she tilted her head back and chugged the liquid in large gulps. The cool, faintly sweet liquid slid down her throat, granting her just enough strength to hold on. Within the glowing aura, the metals restructured themselves at a frantic pace. The discarded engine pipe stretched and thickened, forming an indestructible cannon barrel. Massive quantities of iron and copper ore underwent instant purification, fusing together to craft a thick, stable cannon carriage and base frame. Meanwhile, the hazardous low-grade gunpowder, sealed inside casings of lead and refined iron, transformed into lethal high-explosive projectiles. Time dragged on endlessly. Every second dragged Yan Xing through the searing agony of her mind being torn apart. Sweat soaked her clothes completely, clinging cold and icy to her skin. Still her gaze remained locked rigidly on the luminous mass taking shape, filled with ferocity, fierce protectiveness, and unyielding killing intent. After an indeterminate stretch of time, the sea breeze softened outside the walls. A faint pale glow of dawn painted the dark horizon, the first faint hint of hope before sunrise. Sea mist parted slightly, letting the earliest sunlight filter through cloud cover to fall across the spiked outer walls of Yan Xing's safe house. At that exact moment, the blinding white light inside the building hit its critical threshold. A deep metallic drone reverberated through the space, and the radiance vanished abruptly. Yan Xing's legs gave out entirely. She slid down the workbench to slump against the cold wooden wall, gasping heavily for air with her chest heaving violently. Sweat dripped from her chin onto the floor planks. Though physically drained to the brink of collapse, she lifted her head toward the front of the workbench and let a wild, ruthless grin spread across her face. The towering pile of metal had vanished without a trace. In its place stood a towering metallic war machine, its surface coated in cold, heavy steel sheen. Compact in size, its base locked perfectly onto custom rails beneath the safe house skylight. Yet its cavernous, vastly oversized muzzle exuded an unavoidable aura of cold death. Single-shot light cannon high-grade, forged via talent overlock synthesis. Effective firing range, 800 meters. Extremely high destructive force. Beside the cannon, 10 polished brass armor-piercing high-explosive shells, cast from lead and refined iron and packed with compressed gunpowder, lined the floor neatly like soldiers standing at attention. The morning mist scattered on the ocean breeze, the salty tang of the air still carrying the faint scent left by the 3 fugitives from the previous night. A deep, rumbling horn blast, akin to a beast's low growl, shattered the calm across the open water. Yanxing looked upward through the windproof skylight. 200 meters out on the sea's horizon, a massive vessel cut through white surf, bearing down with overwhelming, oppressive momentum. It was a 20-meter, 3-masted wooden sailing ship. At this early stage of ocean survival, where most players could only drift aimlessly aboard tiny 2x2 or 5x5 wooden rafts, this sailing ship represented an overwhelming technological mismatch against ordinary survivors. The hull was cobbled together from mismatched planks, scrap iron, and plastic. Bulky and ungainly in form, yet carrying a brutal, savage aesthetic. Rust-pitted iron plating lined the outer hull, scarred by acid rain corrosion and stained with dried dark blood. Tattered scraps of cloth stitched into sails billowed loudly in the wind atop 3 thick masts. Dozens of armed men crowded the deck, wielding machetes, handcrafted spears, and a scarce few iron harpoon guns. Every face twisted with cruelty and hunger, resembling a pack of starving wolves spotting vulnerable prey. Standing front and center at the bow was Shark, bare-chested with bulging muscles. A vicious shark-shaped scar sliced across his chest. "Boss, that roofed raft right there." Blackstar pointed greedily toward Yanxing's safe house, swallowing hard. "Scorpion and his group must have failed, but it doesn't matter. She can't escape us now." Shark narrowed his eyes, fixated on Yanxing's 25-square-meter safe house, tightly sealed. Reinforced with tempered glass skylights, far more refined than any other structure afloat on the sea. Greed warped his ugly features entirely. Fine craftsmanship, absolutely exquisite craftsmanship. Shark barked out a loud laugh. "While we've been sleeping on moldy planks, this woman built herself a luxurious shelter. Bring the ship closer. That building, her strawberry seeds, water purifier, everything belongs to me today." The massive sailing ship drifted to a halt 30 meters away from Yanxing's raft. Waves crashed against its hull, sending sharp trembles rippling through Yanxing's safe house. Faced with such an overwhelming disparity in scale, any average player would have dropped to their knees begging for mercy long before this moment. Yanxing did no such thing. A creak echoed as the heavy anti-corrosion wooden door of the safe house swung open outward. Yanxing stepped onto the raft's deck, standing steady amid the rolling waves. Morning wind tangled through her black hair as she stood clad in a streamlined tactical jacket, her expression utterly calm and unperturbed. She looked upon the pirate crew no differently than one would regard a pile of trash marked for disposal. Shark loomed high atop his ship's bow, staring down at her with fleeting admiration swiftly overtaken by vulgar covetousness. "Yanxing, correct?" Shark shouted arrogantly, his tone dripping with the amusement of a cat toying with a trapped mouse. "You see this gap in power between us? Did you truly think a covered hut would crown you queen of these seas? Against overwhelming brute strength, all your petty cleverness amounts to nothing at all." Shark spread his arms to showcase his enormous vessel and his horde of vicious followers. "I'll give you one final chance. Open your doors willingly, hand over your strawberry seeds, water purifier, and all high-tier blueprints you possess. Then board my ship of your own accord. I'm in a generous mood today, so I'll grant you a secure position within my crew. Tend my strawberry crops each day, and I guarantee you an endless supply of clean drinking water. What do you say?" The pirates on deck erupted in crude jeers and mocking shouts. "Boss, that woman's skin looks soft and fine. Hand her over to us once you grow tired of her. Spending every day surrounded by rough men has been driving me mad." Crude remarks carried across the sea wind toward Yanxing's position. She did not so much as furrow a brow in response to their insults. She simply watched Shark quietly, then slowly raised a hand to pat the large bulk concealed beneath a thick waterproof tarpaulin beside her. The structure stood over a meter tall, its base bolted firmly onto reinforced rails built into the safe house's outer wall. Assuming Yanxing had been paralyzed with fright at the sight of their fleet, Shark grew irritable and furious at her silence. "Cat got your tongue from fear? You refuse a kind offer and choose punishment instead? Don't blame me for showing no mercy." He slashed a hand through the air and roared orders. "Archers, take aim. Fill that building full of arrows and force her out into the open." Several pirates armed with handcrafted longbows and harpoon guns stepped forward on the sailing ship, leveling their weapons directly at the safe house. Watching the imminent hail of projectiles bearing down on her home, a cold, slightly crazed smirk tugged at the corner of Yanxing's mouth. "Your ship is far too large." Her voice was soft yet crisp enough to cut through the ocean wind and reach Shark's ears clearly. Shark froze for a split second, unable to process her words. In the next instant, Yanxing seized one edge of the tarpaulin and ripped it away violently. The tarp fluttered through the air and sank into the seawater with a splash. Beneath the covering stood the imposing silhouette of the single-shot light cannon, laid bare under the morning sunlight to reveal its menacing, terrifying form. The dark hollow barrel locked firmly onto the bulky, ironclad wooden ship 30 meters away. The 10 polished brass APHE shells resting beside the cannon glinted with an intimidating metallic sheen. Yanxing curled one hand around the cannon's cold firing crank, her eyes cold and unyielding as the gaze of the grim reaper marking its prey. Picking wooden wreckage out of the water afterward will be exhausting work. The ocean wind died completely in that instant. The discarded tarpaulin twirled slowly downward into the frigid sea amid the morning mist. Where the tarp had rested, the light cannon stood like a dormant steel beast, its barrel raised and aimed straight at the once invulnerable 20-meter iron-reinforced sailing ship. Shark's greedy, twisted expression froze solid the moment he laid eyes on that gun barrel. His grin froze mid-form, his facial muscles twitching awkwardly out of control. What is that? Blackstar, standing beside Shark with a drawn longbow ready to fire, stared with bulging eyes and screamed in disbelief. Boss, that's a cannon, damn it. A cannon? The word crashed like thunder inside every pirate's skull. In these early survival days where survivors fought over wooden clubs and stones, where owning an iron harpoon was enough to claim dominion over stretches of ocean, this woman had somehow built a fully functional cannon mounted on her modest raft. It was the equivalent of primitive humans armed with stones charging into battle, only for their target to draw a rocket launcher without hesitation. This was no mere tactical advantage. It was total dominance across entire eras of technological progress. Impossible. It cannot possibly be real. Shark snapped out of his stunned stupor, snarling in a frantic, hysterical shout. The game only launched a handful of days ago. Where would she even get the means to forge artillery? It's fake, just a hollow metal pipe built to scare us off. Shark brandished the large machete at his waist, acting like a gambler who had lost everything. He screamed madly toward Yanxing's safe house. Dawn, don't let her intimidate you. Loose your arrows. Close the distance and board her raft to kill her. Yanxing did not spare so much as a glance at his desperate last stand. Her icy eyes reflected the ugly, bloated sailing ship without a flicker of compassion. Truth is always dictated by the range of artillery fire. She muttered the words quietly to herself, then gripped the firing crank firmly without delay. No more banter, no hostile exchanges, no window left for the pirates to react. Yanxing slammed the crank down hard and ignited the primer charge. A deafening blast tore through the sky above the ocean. Massive recoil surged through the cannon's heavy metal base and traveled across the entire raft. Even the armor-reinforced base groaned under the strain, driving the whole raft half a meter downward into the seawater. Towering white spray splashed over the raft's edges, dampening the hem of Yanxing's tactical jacket. A blazing orange fireball billowed from the barrel alongside thick, acrid gunpowder smoke. The brass APHE shell streaked forward along a perfectly straight, lethal trajectory too fast for the human eye to track. 30 meters was barely any distance for a cannon. The shell struck its target in the blink of an eye. A thunderous collision shook the vessel. The APHE shell slammed precisely into the sailing ship's hull right along the waterline. The rusted iron plating Shark had bragged was impenetrable tore and curled apart like thin paper against the force of this industrial-grade ordnance. The shell detonated violently a second time deep within the ship's wooden hold. Splintered wood, jagged metal fragments, and mangled flesh exploded outward in all directions like a deadly rainstorm. A gaping 2-meter-wide hole was blasted straight through the ship's port hull. Seawater flooded into the hold in an unstoppable, raging torrent. Agonized screams echoed across the mist-shrouded sea. Pirates who had been shouting threats moments earlier were thrown violently across the deck by the blast wave. They sprawled broken and injured everywhere. Several unlucky crew members were torn apart outright by the concussive force, blood mist spraying across the waves. A single shot. Just one single shot. Shark's feared ocean stronghold, the vessel that terrorized countless survivors across the region, was crippled instantly. Within Region Chat Channel 10086, players who had been arguing over the unfolding live confrontation fell into an eerie silence. Seconds later, scouts observing the fight via telescopes and radar items flooded the chat with frantic, terrified messages. Did I just hear thunder? That wasn't thunder, that was cannon fire. I saw it happen with my own eyes. We're all insane. That woman just pulled a functional cannon out of nowhere. Shark's ironclad ship got blown clean open. Who on earth is this woman? The chat feed flooded with panicked, incoherent messages. Every watching player trembled behind their screens. They had braced to witness a helpless prey being hunted down cruelly. Instead, the seemingly vulnerable victim had pulled out a rocket launcher and reduced the predator to wreckage with a single strike. Standing amid drifting gunsmoke, Yanxing felt her eardrums ring painfully from the explosion, the sharp stench of gunpowder filling her nostrils. Still her gaze remained cold as eternal glacial ice. Spring a leak from just one shot? Nothing but scrap metal cobbled together, as expected. A cold smirk crossed her face as she moved with unhurried, practiced motions. She worked the cannon's ejector mechanism to expel the hot shell casing. The casing clanged loudly against the wooden planks. Bending down, she picked up the second APG shell from the neat stack beside the weapon with steady hands. She rammed the projectile into the chamber, locked the breech closed, and turned the crank to slightly elevate the cannon's barrel. Every movement flowed smoothly, unmarred by panic from the violence she had just unleashed. For someone driven to hoard supplies and fortify her home relentlessly for safety, anyone who coveted her safe house or her newly fruiting strawberry plants deserved to be erased entirely from existence. Back aboard the sinking ship, Shark had been thrown flat onto the deck by the blast wave, his hearing overwhelmed by shrill ringing. Covered head to toe in dust and wood splinters, he scrambled upright to stare at the massive breach pouring seawater into his hull. His heart squeezed tight with crushing dread. "Boss, the ship is sinking. The lower hold is completely flooded." Blackstar scrambled over to him, his face sliced open with bleeding gashes from flying wood fragments. He screamed in despair. "That really is a cannon. We can't fight this. We need to flee right now." "Flee?" Shark whirled around with bloodshot eyes, fixated on the slender figure recalibrating the cannon barrel through the haze. That dark muzzle locked onto his vessel once more, cold and inescapable as the gaze of death itself. Only in this moment did pure, bone-deep terror sink into his bones. His physical strength and his reign of terror meant absolutely nothing in the face of overwhelming heavy firepower. "Turn the helm. Hard to starboard. Retreat immediately." Shark discarded all pride and composure, screaming in a shrill, distorted voice. Yet a bulky 20-meter wooden sailing ship could never pivot quickly amid choppy seas. Before the terrified pirates could even reach the steering wheel, Yanxing's frigid voice cut through the wind once more. "Flee? You'll need permission from my cannon first." The second deafening cannon blast ripped through the ocean's quiet. This time Yanxing raised the barrel slightly higher. It sent the second APG shell streaking straight for the thick main mast supporting the vessel's largest sail. The mast, thick enough to require several men linking arms to encircle, snapped cleanly like a dry twig under the shell's kinetic force and subsequent explosion. The enormous mast crashed downward with its heavy sails and tangled rigging, emitting a horrendous groan of splintering timber. "Get clear!" Terrified screams erupted across the deck. The falling mast slammed into the wooden surface, crushing 4 pirates where they stood instantly. Blood mixed with seawater to flow steadily into the ocean across the tilted deck. Deprived of its main mast, the sailing ship lost all maneuverability, spinning uselessly in place on the waves like a crippled beast with a broken spine. "No, please don't." Shark collapsed onto the blood-soaked deck, watching the woman calmly loading a third shell amid the smoke. Urine pooled beneath his legs as fear overwhelmed his senses completely. For the first time, he was consumed by overwhelming regret. Why had he ever provoked this deadly woman? The third shell slid home into the cannon chamber. Yanxing's sights locked onto a tarp-covered section toward the ship's stern. There, stockpiled crude oil and incendiary materials emitted a sharp chemical odor. "Farewell." She whispered the 2 words and depressed the firing crank. The third cannon shell struck its target with devastating force. A far larger explosion erupted this time, dwarfing the combined power of the first 2 blasts. The stockpiled oil ignited and detonated in a catastrophic chain reaction. A towering mushroom-shaped fireball rose more than 10 meters into the air above the ship's stern. It engulfed the entire rear half of the vessel in raging flames. The 20-meter sailing ship transformed into a massive burning torch drifting across the open water. Crackling flames consumed the wooden hull, paired with the agonized screams of pirates burning alive to form a hellish chorus echoing over the waves. Bathed in the raging firelight from the wreckage, Yanxing's safe house floated 30 meters away, quiet and untouched. She held her repeating poison crossbow in one hand, watching the blazing vessel collapse and sink into the dark sea with impassive calm. A deafening crack split the air as the main keel snapped fully apart. The once feared ocean fortress split cleanly in two. It sank rapidly into the dark ocean depths amid roaring flames and smoldering wreckage. Seawater boiled around the sunken hull, thick white steam billowing upward in massive clouds. Amid floating debris and churning hot water, Shark surfaced with a loud splash. His entire left arm had been torn off in the chain detonation. Blood dyed the surrounding seawater deep red. Crying out in agony, he clung desperately to a smoldering wooden plank with his remaining hand, thrashing violently in the scalding ocean water. Amid the crackle of burning timber, Shark heard soft ripples cutting through the water. He lifted his head in total despair through thick smoke and steam to see the reinforced safe house drifting slowly toward him without haste. Yan Xing stood on the deck, staring down at him from above. No trace of triumphant arrogance lingered in her cold eyes. Only the detached indifference of someone discarding unwanted refuse. Shark gaped open-mouthed, every trace of his past arrogance, greed, and domineering brutality erased entirely by crippling terror and hopelessness.